Chapter 564. To Luoyu City. Chapter 564. To Luoyu City, I have money, and I can give you all of it. So please. Lu Luosi begged. But even Do Yuezhu had been shocked by Lu Luosi's calculations and ambitions, so with Himo's order, he wasn't going to let Lu Luosi live no matter what. He quickly cut off Lu Luosi's limbs, and then stabbed his heart. Yimo was happy with Do Yuezhu's quick actions, and looked at Jim, who was still sitting on the ground. Jim knew it was his turn. He said with a stutter, "Qianbei, I have money too, a lot of it, and I'll give it all to you." Yimo said to Do Yuezhu, "Bring Insi's, Injia's and Annie's bank cards." Yes. Do Yuezhu rejoiced. He knew that his live was spared now. A moment later, Do Yuezhu brought their cards. Although Annie and company didn't know why Yimo wanted them, they didn't object. If Yimo had told him to get it, they had no reason to object. And if Yimo didn't, then they had no power to object. "How much money do you have?" Yimo looked at him and said coldly, "I have 19 million in available funds." Jim couldn't care less about his money now. He just wanted to live. Yimo dumped 3 cards in front of him and said coldly, "Transfer 6 million to each as fast as you can. 1 cent less, and you die. You can keep the remaining million for your retirement." Jim rejoiced, not about the million, but about the word retirement. That meant that he wasn't going to be killed. He still had a lot of assets anyway. Jim did as told as fast as he could. Yimo oversaw the while procès, and it all went perfectly. Then, Yimo scanned Jim and said, "You can call the police, but an hour after you do will be the time you enter heaven. If you want to go to heaven, call ahead." "Oh, no, of course not. Qianbei, I won't call the police." Jim waved his hand. He wasn't an idiot. Even Edward had been killed, so there was clearly no use in calling the police. "And you? Aren't you a Chinese man? It's fine that you didn't help your fellow Chinese actively, but you actually abused them. I would have wanted to kill you, but considering how you did what was necessary, I'll let you go this once." Yimo scanned Do Yuezhu and walked out of the room. Despite saying that, Yimo knew that this wasn't something he could change. There were so many Chinese here, there would be countless people like Do Yuezhu. Yes. Do Yuezhu had been sweating terribly, and finally, he could sigh in relief. "I'm done. Let's go." Yimo stood outside the room of the 3 waiting for him and called out. Annie was holding Injia and didn't say anything. When Yimo gave them their cards back, though, Insi asked, "Brother Yi, you took our cards so that they would pay us compensation?" Yimo smiled. "Yes, I made Jim compensate you guys." "Oh God. Mr. Yi, no. Brother Yi, you're really kind." Annie quickly brushed past Insi and rushed in front of Yimo, wanting to kiss him on the face, but Yimo predicted it and dodged her. Annie didn't mind and quickly ran to a nearby ATM. A few moments later, she screamed so loud she scared some nearby people away. "What's wrong, Annie?" Insi and Injia ran over. "Oh God, I'm not seeing things, am I? There are 6 zeros. This is 6 million. 6 million USD. I'm a millionaire." She had gone from 0 to 6 million. "What? 6 million? Insi and Injia were also shocked. Yimo gave Annie 6 million? Did he like her or something? Injia also inserted his card and was shocked all the same. He also had 6 million. Seeing that, Insi couldn't resist and also checked her card. There was 6 million on it too. That was 18 million altogether. For a long while, the 3 stood still in a daze. Then, Injia said, "Ani can go back now. Let's go tell Ani quickly." "Yes, Ani can go back." Insi's hand was shaking. 6 million. That was a huge amount of wealth, and it had simply appeared in front of them out of nothing. She suddenly thought of Yimo and quickly walked up to him and handed the card back. "Brother Yi, that's too much money. We don't dare take it." Yimo pushed the card back. "Take it. Also, I have some things to tell you guys later." Although they properly accepted the cards afterwards, they still couldn't control their excitement. They went back to their house with Yimo. "Where's Ani?" Insi was the first to notice that her Ani wasn't there. She rarely went out. How come she had gone out that day without telling them? "Do you know that your auntie is different from ordinary people?" Yimo asked Injia and Insi. Injia shook his head obliviously, but Insi looked down, not saying anything. Yemo could tell that Insi knew that Sister Yin had been hiding her real looks, but apparently she hadn't told anyone. Since she knew, Yemo didn't ask further and said, "Your auntie and I are dash." Yemo thought for a long time but didn't know what to say. He could only say, "You just need to know that she's my family. Having finally found her, I already cured her. She had business to take care of, though, so she left. However, before she left, she told me to look after you guys. If you're willing to come with me, leave with me today." Ani left. In Jia and In Si asked at the same time. Yemo nodded but didn't explain. Now, it was up to In Si and In Jia to decide. Even if they didn't go with him, they could live comfortably with 6 million. But Chinese Backstreet really wasn't a place for staying long. In Si was sure that Yemo wasn't lying to them. If he had something to lie about, he wouldn't have had to give each of them $6 million. In Jia and Annie could only look at In Si now. Although she was only a few years older, she was the best person to make the decision. "Brother Yi, we know very little of the world. Ever since I was 10, Jia and I have been living with Ani. Ani even gave us our names. Without her, we wouldn't be alive. Since Ani told us to go with you, we'll go with you." Insi didn't know what to do either, but she knew that they couldn't stay there. Yemo thought of that diary Sister Yin had given him. He didn't have time to look at it before. He opened it now and found a letter for Insi and Injia inside. Yemo breathed out in content. With that, they should firmly believe him. Insi took the letter and looked at it. She nodded. Yemo wasn't lying to them. Her auntie had left that letter for them, and in it, she told them to go with Yemo. Annie looked at Insi and Injia. What would she do after they left? "Where are you guys going?" Annie asked worriedly. Insi and Injia looked expectantly at Yemo. They didn't know where they would be going either. "We are going to Luoyu City," Yemo said. "What? Luoyu City?" The three screamed at the same time. Chapter 565. New Radar System. Chapter 565. New Radar System. "Annie, what are you planning on doing?" Yemo looked at Annie. He didn't know whether she'd be willing to go with them. "Annie, come with us. You can't stay here anymore," Insi quickly said. Annie looked conflicted. "But my dad..." After Insi explained it, Yemo understood that Annie's dad was an alcoholic and had drunken the family into bankruptcy. Yemo shook his head and said, "Go explain the situation to her dad. If he wants to come along, then we can leave immediately, and if not, then never mind. I'll wait for you here." After the three went out, Yemo went into Sister Yan's room. It was a very simple room with just a bed and a mirror. Yemo sighed in front of the mirror, wondering how many times Sister Yin had done the same over the years. Now, she could finally do some of the things she had to do. Yemo didn't stop her, because everyone had their own trouble to take care of. Sister Yin hadn't had freedom before, but she did now. The sky blue quilt on the bed was old but washed clean, and you could even smell a faint aroma come from it in the small dark room. Yemo shook his head and stored the mirror and bed into his ring. Sister Yin had used these things, so he would keep them. Suddenly, Yemo noticed a paper slip fall from under the quilt, and he picked it up. It had some words on it. "Beauty ages easily, while yearning is slow to fade away." Yemo was dazed. Who had Sister Yin been yearning for? Did someone as pretty as her even need to yearn for someone? While Yemo was being dazed, Insi and Annie's voice sounded outside. Yemo's spirit sense scanned them, and there was an old man behind Annie. Yemo could tell that that was Annie's dad. Since they had come wearing backpacks, that meant they were willing to leave. Yemo took a closer look at Annie's father. Due to the long-term drinking, he looked shabby and even a bit dull. Yemo sighed and didn't tell him that the person who had come looking for him had already been killed. The Yin siblings didn't have a lot of possessions and packed up really quickly too. They hurriedly bid their neighbors farewell and gave their neighbors all the things they didn't need before leaving with Yemo. Yemo took them to Shirkaijin and told him to send the group to Flowing Snake. Insi and Injia hadn't expected they would ever be able to go back to China. Even Annie's father said, "I can finally go back." After Shirkaijin and company left, Shawan said, "Qianbei, hundreds of millions of dollars from U.S. banks disappeared in one night, shocking the entire country." "I heard that." "Heard what?" Yemo looked at Shawan. He could tell Shawan was worried about him. He probably suspected that he was the perpetrator. Shawan quickly said, "All the banks in the U.S. have changed to a new generation of surveillance systems, and all secret bases have tightened up security as well." Change in surveillance systems? Yemo frowned. Would they be able to see through his invisibility? Other than that, is there any other news? Yemo thought of the few thousand tons of gold. Surely, they discovered that by now. Unexpectedly, Shawan shook his head. No, they just found that the banks had suddenly lost a couple $100 million, and they're already suspecting this to have been an inside job. No matter how strong someone from the outside may be, no one can just take that much without anyone noticing. Yemo knew that the U.S. must have found out about the gold, but for some reason hadn't announced it. Yemo sunk into silence. After a while, he said, "Find a few of those latest surveillance cameras and install them in a room. I want to see the effects." Shawan returned quickly with 3 surveillance cameras and said in disappointment, "I only got the civilian use cameras, but these are also the newest cameras they're switching to. They're based on the principle of ray divergence. I can't get the military versions for now as I will need some time for that." Yemo nodded. "The civilian version is fine. Set them up in the room." 20 minutes later, Yemo walked out with a stern face. He didn't expect the U.S. technology to be this potent. It had only been a while, yet they already had cameras that could clearly see his shadow. And these were only the civilian use ones. The military ones would be much stronger. The only possibility was that they already had such cameras, but for some reason didn't use them up until now. But why wouldn't they? Seeing Yemo's face, Shawan confirmed his suspicion that it was probably Yemo who did the bank robbing. Although he looked calm, his heart was in rupture. Yemo took a few $100 million in cash from the bank and no one even knew about him? How much power and skill did that require? No wonder he said he would be taking those weapon blueprints. Yemo knew that he might have missed an opportunity. If those weapon merchants also all changed to these new cameras, then he might not manage to get the blueprints. But he still needed to test it out. Thor's, one of the U.S.'s large contractors, HQ was in Lexington, Massachusetts. Their famous product was the Patriot. And the U.S. Mobility Corporation's HQ was in Virginia. It was said to be the place where the Virginia nuclear sub had been created. It was also the home of Northrop Grumman, the creator of the B-2 bomber, one of which was said to be worth $2.1 billion, and of Lockheed Martin, creator of the F-22 and F-35 stealth bomber, etc. What a pity, Yemo sighed. It had only been 2 days, and the U.S. had reacted this quickly? Is there any other news? Yemo felt that he had only been hearing bad news today. Shawan knew what Yemo wanted to know and said, "According to some websites, the new camera uses some special ray convergence and divergence to capture things the eye can't see." The reason why the U.S. was hiding this technology was because they were the first to invent it and didn't want to expose it too early. But now, the radar and surveillance system of the military will all use that latest technology. Applying the technology to the radar system can allow it to detect any intruders at first glance. So that was it. Yemo immediately understood that if he went where he had planned on going now, it would be full of traps. Even if they wouldn't be able to capture him, they would be able to capture an image of him. Yemo truly wasn't scared of the traps, but he couldn't expose himself now. If he did, then the U.S. might go all out on Luoyu. It seemed he could only go back for now and cultivate and wait for the technological development of Luoyu. But Yemo had to at least go check things out to see whether they had really changed their radar system to the latest one. If they did, and he had never found out, that wouldn't have been good. Only when his power was at a certain level could he do what he wanted and crush them under his feet. To Yemo, that time didn't seem too distant, though. Chapter 566. Dumb. Just like him. Chapter 566. Dumb. Just like him back when Yemo annihilated Jason and the Grey Alliance. The ones who benefited the most weren't the Tang Gang, Hong Marshall Gang, or Mountain Gang. It was the native original San Francisco Gang. They took over almost all of Jason's wealth, including his private mansions. And even Yemo had been amazed at how luxurious it was. Tonight was the second night that Yemo came there. He had come for the San Francisco Gang and had only brought Shawan along this time. When Yemo and Shawan came to the meeting room from before, they found that almost all of the San Francisco Gang was there. There were more than 100 people, and when Yemo and Shawan came in, they instantaneously surrounded the two. Haha, our leader Smith already knew gang leader Shao would be coming, so he has been waiting. A white man was sitting at the top. He was probably the leader of the San Francisco gang. But the man speaking was a Chinese man wearing glasses who stood next to him. A tall foreigner was also sitting beside the big boss. Yemo scanned with his spirit sense and found that the guy had guns all over him. Yemo couldn't help but shake his head. This guy was undoubtedly the gun king, Dick. You have a traitor among your men. Yemo looked at Shawan and said. Shawan's face was quite bad. He didn't expect a traitor would be able to pass on news of him so quickly. They'd already gathered everyone to wait for him. I'm sorry, Yichinbei, Shawan said guiltily. Yemo smiled. There's nothing to be sorry about. It's good that you had a traitor. Now they're all gathered up, so we can sweep them away in one blow. This San Francisco gang isn't simple. They already knew where Shi Kaijin was, but actually didn't do anything. They probably wanted to wait for me to appear. The big boss said something, and then the glasses guy said, Our boss Smith says, you killed Jason. So now give us the money you got from him, and we can let you live. If you refuse. The man scanned the area below, and those 100 people all took out their guns. So this was about that mere 50 million? Yemo sneered. The San Francisco gang has killed a lot of Chinese. It's time for you to pay. Then, Yemo jumped up as wind blades flew out from his hands. The air around them seemed to condense before then slicing out. Being at stage 5 meant that Yemo could use 60 simple wind blades consecutively. He didn't need to worry about the quality of the wind blades he used to kill ordinary people. Yemo hadn't come to get revenge for the Tang gang but for Shi Kaijin. Shi Kaijin hadn't died though, so he was in truth just using that as an excuse. Blood splurged out like a fountain. Time seemed to have paused and the air condensed. No one could react. Even though Shawan was at the earth level, he too was stunned at this harvest-like slaughter. 100 people in a mere moment's time had all been slaughtered clean by Yemo, and they all died the same way. It was as though they had been measured by a ruler and then cut in the same place. Looks like I'm getting more and more used to mass slaughter. Yemo's voice sounded casual, but Smith and the glasses man shivered. Demon. This person was a demon. They finally understood how the Grey Alliance, even with that much power, had disappeared in one night. If they had known this demon Yemo was this powerful, there was no way they would have dared bother him. Bang bang, 12 gunshots sounded, but Yemo just made a grabbing motion in front of him, and 12 bullets appeared in his hand. He dropped them on the ground as they made clinking sounds. Dick had a pistol in each hand, but for the first time ever, he forgot to reload his gun. He simply stared dumbly at the bullets on the ground. He heard that some Chinese people would be capable of catching his bullets, and even Johnson could block his weaker bullets, but he had never thought someone would be able to catch all the bullets of his newest gun. Shawan, I'll leave him to you, Yemo said. Yes, Qianbei. Shawan jumped from his spot and charged at Dick like a gorilla. Dick reacted by reloading and firing rapidly. As fast as Shawan was, Dick still reloaded his gun 6 times and shot out nearly 100 bullets. Even a black-level fighter wouldn't be able to survive in the face of that many bullets coming at them from so many angels. But his power was still far inferior to that of Shawan. Shawan was at the earth level, while he was just a yellow-level gunmaster. Chinese ancient martial artists rarely used firearms, since they were useless against real masters. With the exception of those extremely high-tech weapons, of course. As Dick reloaded yet another powerful pistol, Shawan grabbed his neck and dragged him up. Dick was choking, and his pistol slunked to the ground. Yemo walked up to him and sneered. You dared try to get revenge for Jason in your pitiful state? To be honest, you're far weaker than that 3 breaths flying dagger Johnson. Dick growled, but Yemo had no interest in what he had to say. Shawan crushed Dick's neck and threw him onto the floor like a dead dog. Yemo then looked at Smith and the glasses man and shook his head. Shawan, kill these two too? Don't, please. I can tell you who the traitor is. The glasses man actually wet his pants, but Yemo had no intention of letting him go. If Shawan couldn't even track down a traitor among his underlings, then he would never have been able to make it out from Ren Sha. Shawan killed the two without hesitation. This mansion is really attractive, though. Yemo looked at the mansion and sighed. Seeing Yemo burn the bodies away with fireballs, Shawan felt cold on his back. Yemo was still stronger than he had estimated. After a while, Yemo and Shawan left the luxurious mansion behind them in a veil of fire. That night, another big gang in San Francisco was annihilated, the San Francisco Gang. Perhaps the U.S. government would claim that it was their work again. 2 days later, Yemo got a new identity and boarded a plane from San Francisco to Hong Kong. The clouds outside drove him into contemplation. He took out an old diary and caressed it before placing it in front of him. Yemo slowly flipped open to the first page. At the same time, an ordinary-looking woman walked the streets of Chinatown. She was carrying an old bag and looked lonely on those roads. She sighed after walking for a long time. "I'm going back. I once stayed here for quite some years, though, so perhaps I should bring something back." Then, she took out her wallet. There was only money for the plane ticket in there, perhaps not even enough. She carefully took out the card Yemo gave her and smiled before saying to herself, "I'll use your money now, but I'll get your wife a good present in the future." She walked to an ATM. "This is $5,000 US. She smiled, but her smile froze soon. The screen was showing $50 million US and not 5,000. Suddenly, she felt her nose get sour. She didn't withdraw any money and just pulled the card out, murmuring, "You're very dumb. What will you do, giving all your money to me? You're dumb, just like him." Chapter 567. Sister Yan's Diary. Chapter 567. Sister Yan's Diary. The diary's first page had the picture of a young girl. Yemo could tell that that was the young Sister Yan. Yemo felt that even now, there wasn't much of a difference between the two. On the right side, there were the words, "In-Ching Yan's Diary." In-Ching Yan? Was that Sister Yan's name? Yemo suddenly remembered how she had said that his mother was In-Ching. Was she his auntie then? Yemo frowned. If she was, then wasn't the way she had acted with him a bit over the line? Although it was fine in Luoyu continent for aunt and niece to marry the same person, this was Earth. Yemo soon shook his head. Perhaps she was missing his mother. Yemo banged his head. He was thinking too much about it. After having done that with Song Yangzhu, and after living with Ning Qingxue daily, his thinking seemed to have become dirty. Yemo shook his head and flipped to the next page. The words were much more obscure and crooked. Yemo suspected a little kid must have written it, and there wasn't much content. 1980, the 8th of April, a sunny day. Today we were at the Mao Ci1 marketplace. My dad and sister brought me along, and I used the money Dad gave me to buy a diary. I really like this book. I'm 6 now, and I finally have my own diary. Afterwards, there were some trivial things, like the things she did with her sister. From her words, it would seem that her sister protected her a lot. 1981, the 25th of January, a snowy day. A big brother came to our family. He's a few years older than sister. AMD, he became our martial brother. We call him Yi Kai. 1982, the 16th of February, a sunny day. Dad always liked to make us practice martial arts every day, but I didn't like it. I only liked that ancient music instrument. Later on, martial brother and sister practiced martial arts, while I practiced music. At the start, my dad would tell me off, but later on, he didn't say anything and supported me instead. 1982, the 27th of March, a rainy day. A friend of Dad's came over. He said I was very talented and said I should participate in a tournament and say I can win #1 in the country for the young generation. He wanted me to go to Beijing, but I didn't want to. Dad just asked me and afterwards declined that person's offer. 1983, the 19th of November, a cloudy day. I wasn't in a good mood today. I have the feeling that the music I play isn't good at all. I feel Dad's mood also isn't good. 1984, the 21st of June, a cloudy day. Martial brother and sister are both very nice to me, perhaps because I'm the youngest. When there is good food or good toys, sister lets me have a pick first. Sister never fought over anything with me. Dad is also very nice to me and has never criticized me, but he always reproaches sister. Sometimes, she would even cry, and he always lets me pick the good stuff first before letting sister choose. That's why I've been thinking, is sister not his real daughter? The plane suddenly shook a bit, so Yemo sent out his spirit sense. There was some turbulence. A flight attendant still pushed her trolley over and looked at Yemo and asked, "Sir, do you need anything to drink?" "Sure, I'll have a cup of orange juice," Yemo said casually and took the orange juice from her. Then, as he subconsciously glanced at this flight attendant, he smiled intriguingly. He noticed that there was a pistol under the trolley. The flight attendant saw Yemo smile and blushed. She was very pretty, and she knew that those who could fly between Hong Kong and San Francisco were usually rich people. The young man who smiled at her was quite good-looking, and the main thing about him was that he had a certain special temperament. At that moment, she even forgot to keep going. Yemo patted her trolley and quickly grabbed the pistol under the trolley, and he destroyed the internal structure while leaving a spirit sense mark on it before putting it back. He originally thought the pistol belonged to the flight attendant, but apparently it was not. She didn't even know there was a pistol there. Yemo put the diary away. He could look at it after he went back. Since he found a pistol, something had to be wrong with this plane. Yemo thought of Ning Qingshue's plane that had also been between Hong Kong and San Francisco. The flight attendant quickly pushed the trolley further down the aisle and gave a cup of coffee to some man. Yemo kept his spirit sense scanning around, but even after the flight attendant had pushed the trolley all the way back and forth, no one had taken the pistol. Yemo was confused. Did someone forget the pistol there, or did it belong to the flight attendant after all? The flight attendant stopped the trolley, and she started chatting with other flight attendants. There were 5 of them altogether. Yemo retrieved his spirit sense. He had marked the gun anyways and would know who took it. "Are you going to San Francisco on holiday?" The person sitting next to Yemo broke Yemo's train of thought. Yemo just then took a proper look at him. It was an old man in his 60s. He looked like he was in good spirits, but Yemo knew that this old man was about to die. Yemo was curious to see what disease he had. Why would he still travel to the US when he was about to die? The old man's condition was very strange. Although Yemo didn't use his chi to check the old man's body, his spirit sense was usually enough to see what the disease was, but this time it wasn't. If it wasn't for him being able to sense the death chi circulating around the old man, he wouldn't even have known that the old man was sick. Yemo smiled and replied, "You could say that. I want to find someone, and then I went around here and there." He wasn't interested in talking to this old man. He just felt the old man's condition was strange, but it didn't matter to him that much. "Young man, you seem quite strong. You're probably from an ancient martial arts family, right? About that gun, I'm sure that it doesn't belong to you, but you know that since someone put a gun there, it means that he has other plans. The passengers are innocent, so why did you put the pistol back?" The old man's words shocked Yemo. Yemo immediately focused and properly scanned the old man with his spirit sense. He really didn't have any power chi inside of him. How could someone like that see through Yemo's actions? Even though he didn't intentionally try to mask his movements with magic, he was sure that even most black levels wouldn't be able to see his actions. Yet the only thing the old man didn't see was that he had damaged the gun. "You're very strong too. You could tell that I touched the pistol, so you're probably not going to San Francisco on holiday, right?" Yemo's voice went cold. He even suspected that the old man had spirit sense, and that he might be a cultivator as well, one far stronger than him at that. When it came to ancient martial artists, even if they reached a state Yemo didn't know about, he would still be able to know how strong they were, because they couldn't hide their chi waves from his spirit sense. But it was different for spirit chi cultivators. If their power far surpassed his, he wouldn't be able to tell there was anything abnormal about them. "Haha, don't worry. I'm just a useless person who can read a bit of feng shui," the old man explained. There was no way. Yemo was still doubtful, but he didn't question the old man. Seeing that Yemo didn't speak, the old man said again, "Young man, if you don't mind, I can look at your palm for you." Yemo wanted to just reject the old man, but thinking about how the old man had been able to notice his actions, he changed his mind. As soon as Yemo reached out his hands, though, a young man at the back stood up and said, "Grandpa, your body isn't well. You shouldn't do that." Yemo didn't turn back, but he did scan the young man. He was only in his 20s, but also had death chi surrounding him, even though it was much fainter. The old man waved his hand, Xiao Ku, don't worry, I know. The old man looked at Emo and explained, my health isn't too well, so Xiao Ku brought me to San Francisco to look for medical treatment while visiting old friends just like you. But it's all right, give me your hand. The old man looked at Emo and explained, my health isn't too well, so Xiao Ku brought me to San Francisco to look for medical treatment while visiting old friends just like you. But it's all right, give me your hand. Emo realized that the old man also knew he was sick. But Emo couldn't even see anything other than the death chi surrounding the old man. So how did he know that he was sick? The old man was shocked. Emo immediately asked, is there something wrong? The old man contemplated for a long time before saying with a frown, young friend, your palm is very strange. I can't see your past or future. Hold on, your fate seems to have been changed? No, it has been changed for sure. Yes, speaking up, till that point, the old man closed his eyes for a while before saying, powerful being, if I'm not wrong, 2 years ago, your fate was changed. Your destined death was changed to something that even I can't tell. The old man put Emo's hand down and saluted with his fist, young friend, I've proven myself useless. I can't see your fate, but there's one thing I would like you to enlighten me on. Emo was trying to calm down from his shock. This old man was the first person to see through his fate having been changed. His fortune-telling art was too scary. He could actually see one's past and future. Qianbei, ask whatever you like. Emo's tone also became respectful. This was a truly capable old man. May I ask who the person who changed your fate is? I would love to meet this Qianbei. The old man's tone was very careful and serious. Emo didn't expect him to ask about this, so he could only say, that person is a woman, and after she helped me change my fate, she left. I still haven't found her up until now, so I'm also looking for her. As the old man heard this, he looked disappointed. After a long while, he said despondently, I, Mingjushan, am a frog at the bottom of a well. I thought myself to be at the pinnacle of fortune-telling. Yet now I came to realize again that there's always a taller mountain. Such power is not something I can see through. The 2 people in the row in front heard those words and turned around immediately. One of them was a middle-aged woman, and the other was a young girl. The woman looked worried but had a royal temperament to her. Are you Master Mingjushan? The woman suddenly said. Clearly, she couldn't contain her excitement. The old man came back to his senses and nodded. That's right, I'm Mingjushan. He had always been very confident in his fortune-telling art, but had been struck down today. Master Ming, I didn't expect to be able to encounter you here. I'm Master Ming, this is a bit disrespectful, but I want to ask you to look at my fortune, the middle-aged woman asked desperately. She knew it was luck amongst luck to be able to see Mingjushan. So even if it was disrespectful, she had to ask. Mingjushan said, Madam, since you know that I am Mingjushan, you should also know that I have an unpleasant rule. I can only tell fortune 3 times a day. Hence, I cannot see your fortune today. But you only did it once today, right? I can pay double the price. The woman was desperate. She knew that if today passed, she wouldn't have another opportunity like that ever again. Although her family was wealthy, Mingjushan wasn't someone who could be invited by wealth alone. As soon as the woman said this, Mingjushan's face sunk. It was as though he did fortune-telling for money. He didn't ask for money from Emo at all, and Emo didn't propose to give him money either. He was very happy with what Emo did. Yet this woman spoke about money immediately. This made him unhappy. If he were to need money, where couldn't he earn it? Sensing Mingjushan's displeasure, the middle-aged woman realized her mistake and quickly apologized. Sorry, Master Ming, I didn't choose my words carefully. Please forgive me. Mingjushan waved his hand. Don't worry about it, but I really did fortune tell 3 times today, so maybe next time. Then, he stopped talking. The young woman beside her suddenly said, Mom, these fortune tellers are just liars. Dad and I told you so many times, but you don't believe us. We'll go back and think of something else. Xiaoyin, don't say that. Master Ming is one of the 3 most famous masters in China. How can you say that? The woman reproached immediately. Emo looked at the middle-aged woman and could tell that she was sick too. Her eyes seemed tired and her breathing uneasy. Yemo didn't look too carefully, though, because she was still a woman. Sir, I have some things I wish to ask Master Ming about. Can I switch seats with you for a bit? The woman asked. Yemo sighed. He could tell this woman was well-mannered. So someone like her persisting after being rejected meant that she really was worried about her condition. As Meng Jushan heard her words, he just shook his head. Usually, Yemo would have switched with her, but this time, Yemo also had some questions for this Meng Jushan. He felt like Meng Jushan was very extraordinary. He needed to know why Meng Jushan could tell his fate had been changed. He didn't want to let other people be able to see stuff like that casually in the future. Thinking about this, Yemo said apologetically to the woman, I'm sorry, but I can't switch with you this time. However, I'm also a doctor. So suddenly Yemo paused. He realized that the pistol was gone. Yemo sent his spirit sense out and soon found his spirit sense mark. Yemo sent his spirit sense out and soon found his spirit sense mark. Meng Jushan looked at Yemo strangely and thought, this woman wants to swap seats with me because she wants me to look at her fortune. What has that got to do with you being a doctor? That wealthy lady looked at Yemo in shock, however, and thought about what that meant. Did he dash? Yemo's spirit sense stayed focused on his spirit sense mark as he smiled to the woman and said, I said I'm a doctor because I can help you with your condition. Perhaps you don't need Master Meng Jushan for your condition. You know I'm sick, and you can help me? The woman looked at Yemo in shock. Yemo nodded. That's right. I can tell you're sick, and I especially treat those hard and rare diseases. I can cure what others can't. Although Yemo was telling the truth, to others, it sounded very arrogant. A young man in his 20s dared say he can cure what others can't. Even Meng Jushan felt like Yemo's words were a bluff. He knew that there were people stronger than him, but this young man was uttering truly big words. He liked humble young people as he was very humble himself. So as soon as Yemo said this, his opinion of Yemo lowered. Mom, I told you not to believe these people, yet you still don't listen. Sit down for now. That young woman dragged the wealthy lady back down on top of her seat. Then, the young woman looked coldly at Yemo and said, you can trick other people, but don't try to trick my mom. If you try one more time, I will call the police. Yemo felt his chin subconsciously and was speechless. He saw that the woman was really desperate, and so he decided to help him, but now he was thought of as a fraud. The woman continued, my mom has visited a lot of countries for her condition, and not a single hospital was able to give a foolproof method. Yet you just looked at her and you say you can cure her. Do you think you're an immortal or something? You might look a bit handsome, but apparently you're someone who does such dirty deeds. Don't joke about other people's condition. Karma will strike you. She had gone with her mother for checkups to even the US, but what they found out was that it would be very hard for her to undergo surgery at that moment, so she had to come back to rest up first. Yemo wasn't feeling too happy. He clearly had good intentions. It's fine if you don't believe me, but there was no need to say that much. If I say that one charm I draw can instantly cure a person who has been in a vegetable-like state for many years, would you believe me? If I say that your stomach will hurt for 2 hours after we arrive, will you believe me? Yemo retorted. Yemo's spirit sense and observation was very strong, and he could see everything clearly. The forehead between her eyebrows was a little faint due to being cold, and the tip of her tongue was also a bit white with a faint slab of green. Yemo was sure that she had some light food poisoning and had stayed in the cold for too long, so she would have stomach pain for about 2 hours for sure. It wouldn't be anything grave, though. After 2 hours, her own immune system would cure it. You will get stomach pain when we arrive. The woman retorted. Yemo was speechless and shook his head, not wanting to talk anymore. Meng Jushan did think that Yemo had spoken like that with reason, so he also shook his head when the girl retorted. The woman pulled the girl back. But then, the girl turned to the woman and said again, Mom, don't believe that fortune teller. What, Master Meng Jushan? He's obviously in cahoots with that young man, trying to trick you together. They must have tricked countless people. That probably isn't right. How could they have known that we're looking for Master Meng Jushan? Also, I have the feeling that that young man is rather honest, and he did know that I'm sick, the woman said hesitantly. The young girl persuaded again. Mom, do you trust me, or do you trust strangers? Have you ever seen Master Mingjishan? Even if that man is Mingjishan, so what? How can we believe something like that? Besides, it's easy to tell that you're not well from your complexion. Even I can do that much. So others can too, right? Furthermore, liars like this excel at stuff like that. He's even saying that my stomach is going to hurt tonight. So why don't we wait and see whether it will hurt? Yimo and Mingjishan both heard this but didn't mind. Xiaoyin, don't talk about others like that, the middle-aged woman reproached her daughter. The young girl sneered, Mom, he even said that his charms can save vegetable like people. Do you believe that too? The woman sighed and said no more. In her heart, she believed it, because according to her, magical masters like that did exist. Meanwhile, ever since Yimo said that he was a doctor and that he could cure what others could not, that he needed only one charm to save someone in a vegetable-like state, Meng Jishan didn't want to talk to him anymore. He even suspected that that gun might have belonged to Yimo. Yimo could guess what the master was thinking, but as his spirit sense was still on the gun, he had actually found out the identity of the owner of the gun. It was a young man not much older than him. Although he knew the young man, it's not like he had any connection to him. They had just been in the same class at Ning High, and this student had actually been the lowest in the class, and he rarely spoke. Yimo didn't have a bad impression of him, though, because he was one of the few people who didn't jeer at him for getting kicked out of the Yi family. Yimo remembered his name was Luo Dongsheng. Luo Dongsheng was sitting on his seat without moving. Yimo couldn't be bothered with what he was going to do. This Luo Shengdong didn't seem like someone who would hijack a plane or anything, unless he had gone mad. No matter what, the gun was already damaged. Yimo's spirit sense scanned the resting room of the flight attendants, where he saw a tall, skinny flight attendant rip the cloth from the trolley. Yimo immediately knew that TH9SE2 had to be working together. The stewardess who had given Yimo juice might have taken the wrong trolley before. A few hours later, it was time for food, and the flight attendants gave boxed meals to the passengers. Remember to call me. The flight attendant who had given Yimo the juice passed over a pink card with her number on it as she gave Yimo his boxed meal. Yimo took the card speechlessly and nodded. In the meantime, many people went to use the bathroom, and Yimo saw Lu Dongxing glance at a fat merchant as he clenched his fist. Yimo immediately knew that was the person Luo Dongxing wanted to kill. What Yimo didn't understand was why he would do it on the plane. There would be a much greater chance of him getting exposed, and it would quite hard to succeed. After most people finished using the bathroom, Yimo noticed that fat merchant also leave his seat. Luo Dongxing immediately followed. Yimo thought for a bit and also followed. Seeing this, Meng Jishan stared at him and at Luo Dongxing's back and frowned. Chapter 570, Group of Frauds. Chapter 570, Group of Frauds. Because he knew Luo Dongxing, and because they had been classmates, Yimo didn't want him to be pointing a broken gun at people. He quickly walked over to Luo Dongxing and repaired the gun before quickly putting it back. Yimo did this very rapidly, and Luo Dongxing didn't notice at all. All his focus was on the fat man in front of him. Luo Dongxing saw that fat man go to the toilet and all of a sudden squeezed in with him. Who are you? What do you want? The fat man wasn't dumb and immediately knew something was up. If you scream, I'll shoot. Luo Dongxing pointed the gun at the fat man's temples. Who the hell are you? The fat man was sweating a little, but he was rather calm. Luo Dongxing ignored him and gave him a bank card, coldly demanding, transfer 5 million onto this account immediately and don't play any tricks. If you take longer than 3 minutes, I will shoot. All I have is my little life, so scream all you want if you want to die together. I don't care. Don't get agitated. I'll transfer it immediately, the fat man said and took out his phone to perform the transfer. There's no signal, the fat man said shakily. Luo Dongxing sneered. Give me the card and tell me the password. The fat man answered Luo Dongxing without hesitation. Yimo felt like the man had given his stuff away too easily and suspected that the fat man had something up his sleeve. Probably if Luo Dongxing went to withdraw money from that account, he would be exposed. Surely Luo Dongxing wouldn't be that stupid, right? Yimo sensed that Luo Dongxing's hand was shaking. He shook his head. This was likely Luo Dongxing's first time doing anything like it. Luo Dongxing took the card, and his hand started shaking even more. He said coldly, 1 year ago, you and a police officer raped a girl called Xiao Yun. When she went back home, she committed suicide. Today, I will get revenge for Xiao Yun at the same place. Xiao Yun, rest in peace. Luo Dongxing then fired while covering the fat man's mouth. Yimo shook his head. Luo Dongxing wasn't too dumb at least. He had fired quite quickly and even covered the fat man's mouth so that he wouldn't scream. Yimo went back to his seat. Seeing this, Meng Jishan suddenly said, you didn't do anything? So why did you go over? To watch a show? Yimo knew that Meng Jishan was capable, but he didn't understand why Meng Jishan seemed sure that he himself hadn't been responsible for killing anyone. Hasn't his impression of him become pretty bad? Yimo didn't reply to the question and said instead, Mr. Meng, I said before that I'm a doctor. Regardless of whether you believe me or not, your checkups in the US won't be useful. Your condition will not be able to be diagnosed. But I really wonder, how did you know that you're sick? Meng Jishan heard this and was shocked. Had he been mistaken? Was this young man really a master? But how was that possible? Usually the older a doctor was, the more skilled he would be. Yimo was only in his 20s. Furthermore, he had seen many ancient martial arts masters, but none of them had been able to tell that his condition wasn't something a hospital could diagnose. Mr. Ming, if I say that I can cure you, would you believe me? Yimo suddenly spoke again. You. If Yimo hadn't said that he knew the hospital wouldn't be able to diagnose his condition, Meng Jishan would have reproached Yimo for being boastful. But no matter what, Meng Jishan still wasn't comfortable. You can cure my disease? Young man, do you know how many people have looked at my disease? Many talented medical masters weren't able to cure me, yet you dare to think you can? Yimo smiled. There are all sorts of capable people in this world. It's an overstatement to say that no one can cure your condition. You just haven't met the right person yet. Hence, it's your luck that you met me today. Their conversation caught not only the attention of the young man behind them, which was Meng Jishan's grandson, but also of the two ladies in front. The young girl heard Yimo's words and whispered to the middle-aged woman, Mom, I think the two are performing some act trying to cheat us. Yimo couldn't be bothered arguing with them. He no longer had any intentions of helping the woman. His attention was on Meng Jishan. Meng Jishan had such excellent fortune-telling powers. If Yimo could learn the concepts of it and predict his own fortune, perhaps it would benefit his cultivation. The main thing was that Yimo had the feeling that both Meng Jishan and his grandson were people of abundant essence and had good spirits. So he wondered why there would be death chi around them. Meng Jishan heard Yimo's words and laughed in anger. Ignorant and arrogant. If he had known that this young man was like this earlier, he wouldn't even have talked to him. He had seen Yimo's power wasn't bad and assumed that he was from some ancient martial arts family. But now, he really had to start believing that young girl's words. This young man was just a fraud. Yimo saw the sneer on Meng Jishan's mouth, and that he didn't seem to want to talk to him anymore. Yimo wasn't worried, though. He would first see if Meng Jishan had any books on fortune-telling and the like. If he did, he would read it once and give it back. He would be able to remember everything with his spirit sense. Anyway, sir, can you really cure my grandpa's condition? That young man who had listened as well asked excitedly. Xiao Ku, you have no business here. Don't talk, Meng Jishan reproached. Before Yimo could reply, that young girl said to her mother again, Mom, see, they're a group of frauds. If I hadn't stopped you in time, you would have been tricked. Yimo kept ignoring her and said to Xiao Ku, Of course I cannot be 100% sure. I still need to examine your grandfather first, but if your grandfather isn't willing to be treated, he will only live for about half a month. What? You can tell that I only have half a month left? Meng Jishan was truly shocked this time. He had merely come to try his luck in the US, precisely because he had only half a month left. This young man had seen through that just like that. Was he really some hidden master? Yimo sneered. Not only that, but I can also tell that your grandson has this disease as well, but that it is just not as serious. Huh. Meng Jishan's hand shook, and he almost knocked over the cup of juice. Then, he immediately got up and bowed to Yimo. I deeply apologize, young friend. I was looking at you through the eyes of a dog. Please forgive me. May I ask for your honorable name? Yemo got somewhat of a good impression of Meng Jishan in the end. He apologized as soon as he realized he had been wrong. However, Yemo couldn't say his real name. He was too famous in the US at the moment. I'm Ing. Yemo waved his hand. No problem. Yemo waved his hand. No problem. Grandpa. This dash, as Xiaoku saw that Yemo could even see when his grandpa would be dying, he rejoiced. If Yemo could really cure his grandpa's condition, then their family could finally be freed. I was rude before. Meng Jishan interrupted his grandson. He knew what his grandson was going to say, but it was better for him to say it. However, he was a little embarrassed. Yemo continued, Master Ming, I said I will treat you, and so I will. If I didn't want to treat you, nothing you said would change anything. Yes, I am just too desperate. You must not call me master anymore, though. I don't deserve that title. If you don't mind, just call me by my name. Meng Jishan said. In that case, Mr. Ming, tell me about your condition. What I'm bewildered about is that your essence is very potent, and you have no disease. So why are you still like this? Of course, Yemo wouldn't say that there was death chi around Meng Jishan. Meng Jishan looked troubled and immediately asked, Would you have the time to come to my place and have a chat? Yemo knew what Meng Jishan meant, but he really didn't have time. So he said, I am very sorry, Mr. Ming. I'm a busy person. After I land in Hong Kong, I will be going back immediately. Although the business under me isn't big, there are still some things for me to do. If you're willing to say it, then please say it here and now. If not, then I can't help you. Although Yemo could check Meng Jishan's meridians, he knew that this wasn't a physical disease, so checking Meng Jishan's meridians wouldn't help that much. Although it involved some important secrets, Meng Jishan clenched his teeth and explained the Meng family's situation. The reason for my condition is simple. Our Meng family has always only had one son a generation, and no one has ever lived past their 60s. Everyone dies for sure on their 60th birthday. According to the family records, there have been 7 generations already, and still this curse is yet to be broken. There's still half a month left before I reach 60, so when Dr. Amo said that I have half a month left to live, that is when I knew that you are a capable man. Yemo frowned. There was such a thing? If this was a man-made curse, what means would that require? In that case, please give me your hand so that I can check your meridians. Yemo thought for a long while and said. Meng Jishan's meridians were calm and normal. Even after checking it with his chi, Yemo didn't find anything abnormal. Yemo was only more confused, but he had the feeling that he was overlooking something specific. For now, it would seem that death chi couldn't be cured that easily through physical means. Although Yemo could easily dispel the death chi, that would only save Meng Jishan himself. According to him, all the sons of their families every generation had this condition. Wait, Meng Jishan's blood contained faint spirit chi. He had almost missed that. How could a fortune teller have spirit chi inside his body? How is it, Dr. Mo? Meng Jishan asked desperately, seeing Yemo sunk into contemplation. Yemo didn't reply and said to Xiaoku, Give me your hand too. After looking at Xiaoku's meridians, Yemo started to get the gist of the situation. Xiaoku also had some faint spirit chi inside his body, but actually a little bit more than Meng Jishan. Mr. Ming, have you and your grandson eaten the same type of unique fruit? Yemo asked. His heart was beating fast. If this concerned a spirit fruit, then he would be earning big. Meng Jishan looked shocked and saluted with his fist after a while. How did you know, Dr. Mo? Our family does have a special type of fruit, but it should be safe to eat. It has been passed down from our ancestors, and before we learn our fortune-telling art, we need to open the spirit, and for that we need to eat the fruit. Meng Jishan forgot to speak softly because he was so shocked, but he wouldn't care even if others heard. Quite a few people knew about their fruit tree, but only people from the Ming family could eat the fruit. Others who tried would die for sure. Many people knew of this. Is it somehow related to with our fruit tree? Meng Jishan then asked. Yemo thought, if it really is a spirit fruit, it should only make people live longer and not shorter. First, Yemo needed to confirm if their fruit was a spirit fruit. It should be a spirit fruit for sure if it had spirit chi in it, but the lifespan-reducing effect made him doubtful. He said, "That might not necessarily be the case, but please tell me the characteristics of the fruit." Meng Jishan trusted Yimo a lot already, and their fruit tree was no secret anyway. The maturing process of this fruit is completely different to that of normal plants. It blooms each year but never bears fruit. One must wait for 10 years of consecutive blooming before it bears 3 fruits. This fruit is very precious, but it's very bitter too. You can't even eat it. If you try to force it, you will only faint on the spot. So in the end, we started using honey to eat it, and that way, we barely dash. Yimo stopped Meng Jishan. Yimo was sure that this had to be the second main ingredient for his foundation establishment pill, the bitter 10 years. Even if Meng Jishan didn't let him go to the Meng family, he would still go no matter what. If he let this opportunity pass by him, he wouldn't be. "Yimo, I can cure your condition, but I need to go to your house," Yimo said. Anything had to make way for his cultivation progress. "Mom, look at those frauds behind us being really patient. They've been acting for so long, yet they're still going," the young woman commented in contempt. The wealthy woman was dazed. She knew a lot about Meng Jishan's legends. In the Meng family, there had indeed never been males who lived past 60. They said that that was because the Meng family had leaked too many heavenly secrets and that it was divine punishment. After hearing this, she immediately became certain that the 2 men weren't acting. They were really Meng Jishan and a capable young doctor. Besides, Meng Jishan's air of seeming like an immortal Taoist really didn't appear fake. Thinking like that, the wealthy woman could no longer calmly stay seated. She got up and said to Yimo, "Doctor, could you help me as well? I apologize for what my daughter has been saying. She's a young student who doesn't understand a lot of things. Please bear her no mind." Yimo smiled. "Big sister, I don't dare help treat you, or else police would come for me immediately." Hearing the irony in Yimo's tone, the woman blushed and wanted to apologize again. But the young girl stopped her once more. "Mom, you still don't believe me. Are you really going to trust a fraud?" The woman's face burst red, and she slapped away the hand of the young girl. She said with red eyes, "Xiaoyin, I know you're acting in my benefit, but do you really want to see me die? If it wasn't for Nan Nan, I might as well die, but now, I absolutely can't yet. You call Master Meng fake, a capable doctor fake. Money, money, money. Is money really that important to you? Can you even spend all the money you have now?" Mom dash that young girl was dazed. She didn't expect her gentle mom to become this angry. Yimo didn't mind the two as he noticed that Luo Dongxing had returned to his seat with an anxious complexion. Chapter 572. Simple Scam. Chapter 572. Simple Scam. By then, most people had started coming back to their seats, but that fat man still hadn't come back. Yimo estimated that it wouldn't take much longer before a flight attendant found out. And obviously, it was no good that Luo Shengdong was acting like that. Other than his facial expression, everything else about his body said that he had killed the man. Meng Jishan wasn't very happy about being interrupted, but knowing that other people were also worried about their condition, he thought it to be understandable. "I'm sorry, doctor. I'm really sorry, but I can't die yet. There's some people I can't leave behind. Please help me," the middle-aged woman begged Yimo. Because she was so anxious, her voice was inevitably getting louder, and the people around her all looked over. At this moment, a flight attendant walked over as well and said apologetically to the woman, "Madam, please fasten your safety belt and don't leave your seat except for in the case of an emergency." Yimo rubbed his head. He really didn't feel like having everyone looking at him, so he said, "Big sister, please sit down and then we can talk." The middle-aged woman sat down. "I do charge a fee, and it's going to be very expensive. If you're not willing to spend money, you shouldn't ask for my help." Yimo wasn't too nice, but he wasn't heartless either. He had a good impression of the woman, just not so of her daughter. Another thing he took into account was that he could tell the woman was wealthy from her clothes and jewelry. It would be fine to make her pay up. If she didn't want to pay, or if she was scared of getting scammed, then he would save himself the trouble. Hearing this, everyone listening in from the side had that look of realization that said, "So in the end, it's still about money." Meng Jishan knew of Yimo's power, and he knew that masters usually wouldn't do things for free, so he thought it normal for Yemo to ask money. But asking for money on the spot ruined the master image, so he would usually perform his services first, and then his clients would pay him with whatever they could. And this woman was already certain that Yemo had great power. Otherwise, Meng Jishan wouldn't have believed him. Hearing Yemo ask for money, the young woman had an extreme look of disgust on her face. She opened her mouth to speak, but eventually didn't say anything. Of course I will give money, but I don't have that much cash on me. I will make sure you receive it after we get off the plane, the woman quickly nodded. Yemo immediately said, just give me your card and its password. Sure, sure. She took out a gold card from her bag without hesitation. The password is 765,690. There's 3 million inside, and you can take up to 10 million from it. If that's not enough, Yemo took it and waved his hand. That'll do. Actually, these few millions were in fact merely a few $100,000 USD, so Yemo really didn't think much of it. The young woman glared at Yemo. Yemo didn't even look at her and said to the woman, give me your hand. The young girl couldn't do anything to Yemo, so she looked at the wealthy woman and called out. But that woman only gave her back a look of disappointment and sadness. She ignored the young girl and gave her hand to Yemo. The young woman saw this and made up her mind to get the people in her family to freeze the card as soon as possible. The people around admired Yemo for tricking a few million out if someone in the blink of an eye, and he hadn't even diagnosed the patient yet. Now they wondered how the young fraud would fulfill his lie. Yemo put his finger on a meridian and checked it with his chi. He immediately found out what had happened to the middle-aged woman. There was a mutation in the blood vessels in her brain, which had brought about a mutation to all the blood vessels in her body. The vessels were all covered with small black dots. It would be very hard for modern medicine to cure that. After she got this disease, she would have at most only a few months left to live, and even then, she would be tortured by the disease a few hours each day. And not some usual torture. Her entire body would be in pain. Normal people wouldn't be able to endure it. Luckily, her cerebral neurons hadn't been damaged, or she wouldn't even have been able to keep thinking properly. Yemo had some sympathy for the woman. The hospital wouldn't be able to cure this, but Yemo could do so in an hour. Although he could do it right now, Yemo didn't. He didn't want to expose himself on the plane. Considering that, Yemo took out some things from his pocket and took 20 minutes to draw a charm on the chair. No one knew how he could fit so many things in his pocket. After he finished, he put the things back in his pocket. Meng Jishan looked in shock. He didn't expect Yemo to really be curing a disease through charms. Meng Jishan believed in charms. He could make a few simple ones himself, but he had never seen life-saving ones. In that instant, Yemo became all the more mysterious to him. Yemo gave the charm to the woman and said, "This is a perversion and sickness removal charm. Put this on your head at 5 a.m. tomorrow. When the charm turns to ashes, you will be fine." Although the middle-aged woman really believed in Yemo, she was still dazed at Yemo giving her a charm. Even if she put that on her head 1,000 times, it wouldn't turn into dust for many years. Thinking about this, she asked, Doctor, I want to ask how long it would take to turn into dust? Yemo looked at her. According to your condition, it should take around 30 minutes. The dust will actually be the poison inside your body, so you mustn't just throw it away casually. Find a remote location to bury it. At this moment, many people applauded Yemo for being an expert in scams. People thought he would be trying to cure her on the spot, yet he used such a method to delay time. By the time the lady found out it was all fake, he would be nowhere to be seen. Finally, someone couldn't keep watching and said, "Young man, doing such things is immoral. You took her card, and you're just going to give her a charm?" Yemo scanned this person and said casually, "We mutually agreed on this. What has this got to do with you? By the way, although I can cure your condition with a charm too, I won't sell it to you even if you give me 100 million. Haha, I'm sick too now? You're really funny," the middle-aged man retorted. Yemo said plainly, "Yep, you have a very hard-to-cure heart disease. You." The man wanted to get up and fight Yemo but was stopped by some people beside him. He had such a strong body, yet this young fraud said he had a heart disease? Bullsh*t. Then, The middle-aged man said to the woman, "Big sister, you need to be careful of frauds. There are too many of them these days." The woman smiled but didn't reply. The man could only shake his head. He realized he wasn't really minding his own business. At that moment, Yithimo saw a flight attendant start to ask around about the empty seat. Soon 2 undercover airline police officers appeared, and the captain of the plane spoke through the microphone. "Dear passengers, welcome aboard our flight. This is your captain speaking. My name is Yu Yiming. I regretfully have to inform you that there has been a murder aboard this plane. A passenger was killed in the restroom, so in order to ensure everyone's safety, please don't leave your seats right after the plane lands." Soon 2 undercover airline police officers appeared, and the captain of the plane spoke through the microphone. "Dear passengers, welcome aboard our flight. This is your captain speaking. My name is Yu Yiming. I regretfully have to inform you that there has been a murder aboard this plane. A passenger was killed in the restroom, so in order to ensure everyone's safety, please don't leave your seats right after the plane lands." The plane immediately erupted into chaos. Everyone became anxious, afraid that there might be people trying to hijack the plane. Yimo scanned Luo Dongxing. Although he was clearly nervous, he was much better than most passengers. But Yimo immediately judged that this Luo Dongxing had no potential to be a killer. He was still keeping that gun on him. Yimo shook his head. Why keep the gun after killing the target? That was asking to be caught. But then, he considered Luo Dongxing might have a reason for keeping the gun. The flight attendant on his side was pushing a trolley anxiously, and it seemed like he had wanted to use the trolley to relocate the gun. But for some reason, a different flight attendant found out about the situation sooner than he'd expected. He should have dealt with the gun immediately. Maybe he was afraid of leaking his fingerprint? But couldn't he have washed it with water? Or was it impossible to just wash fingerprints away with water? But then the dead person would have his fingerprints on him anyway, right? Suddenly, Yimo remembered that his fingerprints were also still on the gun, and he cursed. He wasn't scared of anyone, but this flight was sensitive, and if anyone investigated, they might find out that he was Yimo. If the U.S. knew that Yimo had gone to San Francisco, they might suspect him for the robberies. Meng Jishan was the only other person who knew who the killer was, but he didn't seem to even hear the captain's words as he carefully asked Yimo all sorts of questions. Although he was more interested in the bitter 10 years, Yimo was also interested in Meng Jishan's fortune-telling art. Hearing the conversation between the two, the wealthy woman wanted to ask more questions, but she was afraid Yimo would be annoyed at her, and so she didn't say anything. But she didn't talk to her daughter anymore. One could see how disappointed she was at her. After the murder, the atmosphere on the plane became weird. People all focused their attention on the people next to them, fearing that they were sitting with the killer. A few more policemen appeared. No one wanted to be suspected, so those who wanted to go to the toilet also resisted the urge to go. A few hours later, the plane landed at Hong Kong International Airport. The passengers got off and had to go through a temporary detector that was set up. The detector would sound an alarm if any weapons were detected. Luo Dongxing obviously realized that, and his face looked pretty bad. According to his plan, the pistol should have been moved away already. He didn't expect the murder to be exposed that early. As Yimo saw this, he knew that Luo Dongxing had no way of hiding the gun, so he could only take the gun and put it in his ring when they got off the plane together. When Luo Dongxing walked past the detector and no alarm sounded, he started suspecting his own ears. He was dazed for a moment as people on the side pushed him before he walked into the foyer subconsciously. He felt the place where he had put the gun, but it was gone. He suspected that he might have left it on the seats, but he couldn't go back and check anymore. The flight attendant who was on Luo Dongxing's side was very worried too, so when she saw Luo Dongxing being fine, she was overjoyed. Before Yimo left, he heard Luo Dongxing say to the girl that they should go check out Luo Yu. Yimo nodded. It seemed like Luo Yu was quite famous, which was good to attract all sorts of capable people. Although they knew the culprit was amongst the passengers, they didn't have any incriminating evidence, and almost everyone had gone to the toilets, so no one knew when the fat man could have been killed. The passengers couldn't be kept there, not to mention that there were important people among them, and they couldn't be held back there for some dead merchant, so after a simple interview, everyone left. Before Luo Dongxing left, Yimo put the gun back on him again. Before the wealthy woman left, she expressed her gratitude to Emo many times. Although she hadn't been cured yet, she could tell from Emo's eyes that Emo hadn't scammed her, yet that young girl was getting more and more impatient. Due to Meng Jiushan's case popping up suddenly, Emo had to go to the Meng family to see the bitter 10 years. Hence, he followed Meng Jiushan to their house. The Meng family had been in the Huzhong province in the past, but they moved to Hong Kong during the Cultural Revolution. After Luo Dongsheng and that flight attendant left the airport, they took a taxi to Hong Kong Miaopu. Although it was very chaotic there, that was where the housing was the cheapest. After getting off the taxi, it was already 10 p.m., and the flight attendant asked, "Dongsheng, how was your pistol not found?" "I was so worried." "Luckily, you actually had a way to hide your gun." Luo Dongsheng was very worried and said immediately, "Ingzi, it's best if we leave this place as soon as possible. Come with me to Luo Yu. I heard that the city lord of Luo Yu is very powerful. We can go there." Luo Yu is open to the world now, and they need all sorts of capable people to go and welcome Chinese settlers. "Why? Didn't you say we would go after finishing up everything here? Besides, I still want to get my end-of-the-year bonus," Ingzi said. Luo Dongxing shook his head and said, "I suspect they might know I was the culprit by now, because I might have left the pistol on the seats." "What?" Ingzi's face changed drastically. If the pistol was left on the seats, then they would be caught through the fingerprints for sure. Suddenly, Luo Dongxing felt his pockets and said in a daze, "At the checkpoint, I searched many times through my pockets, yet I didn't find it on me, so why did it suddenly appear now?" Ingzi said, "Could it be that you were too nervous and didn't feel it?" Luo Dongxing shook his head. "There's no way. It's not like it's just some piece of cloth. Furthermore, the detector would have detected it." The two looked at each other for a long time before saying at the same time, "Someone is helping us. Dongsheng, let's go to Luo Yu. I don't want to live here, anyway. I want to live a peaceful life." Ingzi suddenly made up her mind. "Okay, let's go to Luo Yu." Luo Dongxing also made up his mind. At the same time, in a 5-star hotel in Hong Kong, that wealthy lady was holding her charm with an absent mind. Her young daughter carefully went outside, calling back home to tell about the card scam and request for the card to be frozen. "Mom, I already told you. Don't believe this. A charm thingy should be able to cure you? Is that possible? The U.S. hospitals all agreed you should stay there for extended diagnosis. We should go back to the U.S. after we deal with the family business," the young girl said. She was still not happy about her mom being tricked and still refusing to listen to her. Chapter 574. No Medicine for Regret? Chapter 574. No Medicine for Regret. That middle-aged woman carefully put away the charm inside. "Xiaoyin, there are a lot of capable people in China. My dad once told me, Qingkue, you shouldn't underestimate anyone, nor should you blindly follow others. Sometimes, the ones who can help you best might be those who casually pass by you." "Mom, Grandpa comes from the old society." Before she finished, she was interrupted. "Xiaoyin, call me Ani from now on and don't call him Grandpa. If the Shin family people hear that, they will gossip about it. The words I said on the plane were a bit over the line. Please don't take it personally. Nan Nan sigh, never mind. Nan Nan has his own fortune." The woman's tone was melancholic. Xiaoyin was dazed. She suddenly thought that it wasn't right for her to have let the people in the family freeze the card. Even if the money was scammed, it was what Auntie Qingkue wanted herself. Sensing the sadness in the woman, Xiaoyin suddenly said, "Mom, you'll always be my mom in my heart. I'll call you Auntie in front of others from now on, though. Don't worry, we'll go back home and prepare a bit, but then we'll go to the U.S. for treatment. I believe you can get better for sure. As for Nan Nan, don't worry, I can take care of him." The middle-aged woman waved her hand. After a long pause, she said, "No matter whether I get better or not this time, I won't go back for treatment anymore. Nan Nan is also a part of the Shin family, so he can stay there. But I've clearly been in the mortal world for too long. I shouldn't keep thinking about these things." "Mom, you dash." Xiaoyin looked at the middle-aged woman and saw how strong her decision to become a nun was. The middle-aged woman didn't talk for a while and fell into silence. "Arg!" Xiaoyin suddenly screamed and fell to the ground. What's wrong, Xiaoyin? The middle-aged woman woke up from her reverie and quickly helped Xiaoyin up. My stomach hurts so much. Xiaoyin screamed. At that moment, both the middle-aged woman and Xiaoyin seemed to remember something, and they looked at the clock on the wall at the same time. It was 12 a.m., midnight. The young doctor on the plane had said that her stomach would be hurting for 2 hours. I'll call a doctor. The middle-aged woman saw the young girl rolling on the bed in pain and was very worried. No, Mom. Xiaoyin pulled to her mother's hand. That person said it would only go on for 2 hours. I should be fine after 2 hours. We'll see tomorrow. The middle-aged woman believed Yi Mo's words, and Xiao Yin's current situation proved that the young man's words were right. Wasn't he a magical doctor? She sighed. If Xiaoyin hadn't treated him like that, then perhaps he could have saved her this pain. Xiaoyin felt her pain get better and asked, Mom, could it be that he purposely made my stomach hurt? Xiaoyin, don't say that. That young magical doctor didn't even touch you. How could he make your stomach hurt? The middle-aged woman was clearly a bit unhappy. Yes, Mom, I know. I truly hope he is as capable as this makes him seem. Maybe you can really get better. Suddenly, she stopped. Did she really think like that so easily? She clearly knew what she thought before. She was sure that that guy was a fraud and never held the faintest belief that he would be able to cure Auntie Chinkue's condition. That's why she froze the card. But now, she was doubtful too. How would a fraud know her stomach would hurt tonight? After a long while, Xiaoyin crawled up and said, I'm fine now. My stomach doesn't hurt anymore. The both of them looked at the clock, and it was 2 a.m. It had been exactly 2 hours. Mom, the young girl called out. The two looked at each other for a long while without speaking. Everything that young man said was confirmed. If it was just a guess, then his luck was too absurd. Mom, why don't you putting that charm on your head and trying? Xiaoyin suddenly really wanted to see if that charm would work. The middle-aged woman shook her head. It's not 5 a.m. yet. He said it must be 5 a.m., so I'll wait till then. Xiaoyin didn't argue for once and nodded. 3 hours went by quickly, and it became 5 a.m. The middle-aged woman picked up the charm and put it on her head reverently. She wanted to lie down to prevent the charm from falling, but when she put the charm on her head, she felt it get stuck to her head automatically. Before she could think about anything else, her body started to heat up. There was a pins and needles kind of sensation all over her body. There were clearly many things the eye can't see being sucked away by the charm. She couldn't see it, but she could feel it. Mom, how is it? Xiaoyin also looked astonished, seeing that the charm wasn't falling off. The middle-aged woman didn't talk. She felt a lazy, warm sensation all over her body, and she didn't want to talk. Half an hour later, she woke up abruptly as the charm slowly fell to the ground. It turned into dust, which then didn't separate at all. As the middle-aged woman witnessed that, she suddenly teared up. No one knew better than her that her condition had truly been cured. In a short 30 minutes, some magical charm had cured her. After standing shocked for a while, the middle-aged woman took out a handkerchief and carefully wrapped the dust. The doctor had said it would be very poisonous and that it had to be dealt with carefully. Mom, it really turned into dust. Is it? Xiaoyin looked at the middle-aged woman in disbelief. She could feel her worldview get shattered. She remembered that young man's words. If I say that one charm I draw can instantly cure a person who has been in a vegetable-like state for many years, would you believe me? If I say that your stomach will hurt for 2 hours after we arrive, will you believe me? Funnily enough, her stomach really had hurt, and the charm did turn into dust. That magical Dr. Mo, he's a real master. He could cure my disease in half an hour, but the money I gave him isn't even 10% of the value of this treatment, Chinkue said. Xiaoyin just murmured to herself, it actually worked. Suddenly, she said desperately, Mom. He said he could cure even vegetable-like people with charms. Great-uncle has been before Xiaoyin finished. The middle-aged woman shook her head. You can't meet such masters whenever you want, Xiaoyin. At this moment, she suddenly realized why Auntie Chinkue had called it luck amongst luck to be able to see Meng Jishan. It had been even greater luck to meet that magical doctor. Yet she didn't even ask him for a charm, and instead, she called him a fraud. She suddenly thought of the card. If that doctor went to withdraw money and found the card frozen, what would he think? He must think the real fraud is Ani Chinkue. Thinking about this, the young girl really regretted. Hong Kong Ming Mountain Villa. This villa was more famous than even the Mo family's half-mountain mansion due to the Ming family being renowned as one of the 3 great Chinese feng shui families. There were countless people wanting to ask Master Ming to look at feng shui or tell their fortune, but only those very significant people could actually invite him. Each time, they would treat him with the highest respect they could. Yet today, Master Ming was carefully accompanying a young man in the Ming family mountain villa. At this moment, Yi Mo stood in the fruit garden of the luxurious mountain villa of the Ming family. Looking at the fruit tree in front of him, his mood swung from extreme excitement to deep disappointment. Why? Because the 3-meter-tall tree in front of him was indeed a bitter 10-years tree, but due to neglect, it was on the verge of death. At this moment, Yi Mo stood in the fruit garden of the luxurious mountain villa of the Ming family. Looking at the fruit tree in front of him, his mood swung from extreme excitement to deep disappointment. Why? Because the 3-meter-tall tree in front of him was indeed a bitter 10-years tree, but due to neglect, it was on the verge of death. Bitter 10 years was something hard to find even in the cultivation realm. It was the hardest to find of the 3 main ingredients needed to make the foundation establishment pill. It was the rarity of this ingredient that resulted in the foundation establishment pill being so hard to get. It wasn't rare to find one fruit be sold for tens of thousands of spirit stones. It was very hard for the bitter 10 years to grow. It only grew a centimeter each year. This one was obviously close to 300 years old, which was very rare. The only pity was that even though it seemed to have been taken care of properly, its own spirit chi was dissipating, and thus it was near death. Even if Yi Mo wanted to save this tree, he would have to have spirit stones to build a spirit gathering formation. But even if he had spirit stones, he wouldn't be able to waste them for building formations. He would use them to cultivate. But this also meant that the Ming family had quite the skills to be able to keep the bitter 10 years alive for 300 years. There was a saying about the bitter 10 years, 10 years to bloom, 1 morning to bear fruit. Bitter in the heart, but sweet in its Tao. In the cultivation realm, you were only considered a proper cultivator when you reached the foundation establishment state. If one wanted to reach the foundation establishment state, the bitter 10 years was a must. Dr. Mo? Meng Jishan saw Yi Mo stand in front of the bitter 10 years and sigh in disappointment, so he called out. Yi Mo looked at Meng Jishan and said, "This tree only has a few years left to live." Hearing this, Meng Jishan looked despondent and nodded. "Yes, you are right, Dr. Mo. This tree indeed doesn't have long left." Yi Mo nodded and asked, "How do you know this tree only has a few years left to live?" "This is what my ancestors said. When this tree leaves the place it grew up, it will have lived for only 300 years. There's only a few years left until those 300 years." Meng Jishan felt sad. This tree was very important to the Ming family. Leave the place it grew up, so not its birthplace? This tree wasn't planted by your ancestors? In that case, how could you let it live for 300 years? Yi Mo was bewildered. This was a miracle. There were a lot of words that required explanation word by word, and sometimes it took a whole day to explain one word. The art formula wasn't long, about 10,000 words, but what shocked Yi Mo was that it was the closest thing to spirit chi cultivation he had ever encountered on Earth. The difficult words didn't bother Yi Mo at all as he knew much more than Meng Jishan. This art gave Yi Mo much more inspiration than the book he had seen at the Nine Moon Sect. He had understood a lot from it, and if he went back into solitary training now, he would even be able to have some breakthrough. The trip had not been a waste of time. "Okay, I understand now. Call all the male members of your family over. I'll remove this disease for you." Because the tree couldn't live anymore anyway, Yi Mo didn't tell them to stop eating the fruits. Meng Jishan rejoiced that Yi Mo was willing to help. There weren't that many males in their family, only 6, so Yi Mo didn't require much time to dispel the condensed spirit chi inside of them. As for the women in the Ming family, Yi Mo gave the family a recipe for making some medicine for that. Eventually, Meng Jishan took out a check with a huge sum on it, but Yimo rejected. Although it was a lot of money, it was nothing to Yimo. Moreover, he had already acquired quite a lot from Meng Jishan. A master indeed. Meng Jishan saw that Yimo might have asked for 3 million from that wealthy lady on the plane, but he rejected the tens of millions on the check, and this changed his perception of Yimo greatly. The Duanheng Ranges, North Spoon 7 stars? Why did that sound like the entrance Luo Xian had talked about? Jing City, this place wasn't far from North Korea, at the borderline of China. Even though it wasn't winter, Chinese New Year had just passed, but there was still a lot of snow. Jing City, this place wasn't far from North Korea, at the borderline of China. Even though it wasn't winter, Chinese New Year had just passed, but there was still a lot of snow. It was March, early spring already, yet Jing City still had endless snowfalls. Most of the people in the city always stayed in their houses with their heater on, watching TV. Mei Mountain was the tallest mountain in Jing City. Although it sounded the same as Mount Emei in Sichuan, there was a huge fundamental difference between the two mountains. Mei Mountain was constantly covered in snow. Except for some individual places and at special times, one couldn't see green anywhere. At this moment outside a village at the foot of the Mei Mountain, a stressed-looking young woman was walking arduously on the road. It seemed like she wanted to enter the village and take a break. Her bulging stomach made it hard for her to walk, her steps were weak, and she was obviously powerless. In the end, she accidentally slipped and fell to the floor. The woman used her hand to protect her stomach as she wanted to get up, but she failed again and again. The snow was getting more and more intense, and there was no one to be seen on the small road. Why is someone laying on the snow? A nun with a huge backpack thought in wonder, but she walked up to the woman very rapidly. She looked at the woman on the ground and helped her up. She muttered to herself in shock, "Such a pretty girl, and she's not from here. She's pregnant? Wait, it would seem she has cultivated ancient martial arts before, but is just heavily wounded." Without even checking the woman, the nun quickly carried her and the big backpack up Mei Mountain as she ran even faster than before. Cultivation was truly a matter with no ending. As soon as Yimo came back and gave Su Yuehua what he had to give her, he started cultivating again. He had understood some things useful to him from the Ming family's fortune-telling art. In the turn of an eye, a few months passed. But today, Yimo couldn't focus his mind anymore. He felt annoyed and restless. Yimo got up and checked his power and found that he was at the middle stage of Stage 5. He was quite happy that he had been able to improve in only a few months. After Yimo came out, Su Yuehua, Su Ping, and company quickly came. Ning Qingxue arrived by Yimo's side on first notice too. Surprisingly enough, Yi Zifeng and Yi Ling also came. Yimo felt strange and asked Yi Zifeng, "Zifeng, why have you come? What happened to the Yi family in Beijing?" "Big brother, we're brothers. I know Grandpa is right, but if we hide in Beijing while Luoyu is in hardship and come back after Luoyu overcomes the difficulty, what kind of brothers would we be then?" Brothers need to share hardship together too, not just the good times. Even Yi Ling knew to come help you. How can I fall behind? Yi Zifeng's words touched Yimo. He knew that Yi Zifeng quite possibly might not be blood related to him, but he would always see Yi Zifeng as his blood brother nonetheless. Soon, the entire management level of Luoyu assembled at the meeting hall. They were preparing to discuss the complete relocation of Luoyu Pharmaceuticals to Luoyu City. Luoyu had achieved some level of self-protection by now, and they believed that they were nearing the end of the U.S.'s patience. Luoyu was wealthy, and large amounts of assets flew into Luoyu. But what shocked everyone was that no matter how big Luoyu got, they just wouldn't enter the stock market. People could buy Luoyu's products, but not their shares. And because Luoyu had plenty of money, they had started looking for large military countries with weapons to sell for some transaction opportunities. Those countries only looked at money, and so they all accepted some form of dealings with Luoyu. But it wasn't like Luoyu could buy all sorts of weapons left and right. Even if a country were willing to let Luoyu buy their military-grade weapons, they would have to acknowledge that Luoyu was an independent government first. That condition stopped a lot of countries in their tracks. America, Russia, Germany, France, and England were all powerful military countries. The U.S. couldn't admit Luoyu's independence, nor would they sell weapons to Luoyu, as they were just waiting for Luoyu to mature before they would start trying to seize it. Germany, France, and England were all on the same team, and they knew what the U.S. was thinking. Although they were interested in the money Luoyu could bring them, they couldn't just casually sell Luoyu weapons taking the U.S. into account. But Russia was different. They didn't care. Although Russia wasn't as militarily potent as the Soviet Union had been, they had developed on a broader scale. While England, France, and Germany were in the middle of hesitating, they admitted Luoyu's independence without hesitation and simply sold their weapons to Luoyu as they pleased. Large amounts of money fell into Russia's reserves, while large amounts of planes, nuclear submarines, and tanks went into Luoyu. Seeing this happen, Germany finally couldn't resist anymore. They didn't expect that some small Luoyu would have that much power, gobbling up batch after batch of weapons. But to them, it was still a bit hard to admit Luoyu's independence. America immediately stood out to criticize Russia, saying that they were increasing volatile factors in the world, but Russia soon retaliated by saying that the U.S. was the largest distributor of weapons in the world, so especially the U.S. had no right to criticize Russia. Marshall Brother, after making our latest nuclear weapon, we've modeled the explosion, and it shouldn't be weaker than any nuclearly armed country's weapons. Our newest intercontinental missile can easily bomb the U.S. We have the ability to send a nuke right to their dinner table, Yixing said joyfully. Yimo nodded. He was very satisfied with Yixing's capabilities, and he trusted him unconditionally. Yixing is right. Our greatest achievement is the newest nuclear reactor engine. Without the new computers and mechanical stations you bought, we really wouldn't have been able to produce it, Su Ping nodded. Russia is giving us rather average things, so I think we still need to produce our own weapons. If you give me 3 years, I'm sure that Luoyu will be the center of the world's military technology, Yixing said pridefully. Making weapons is a means, not the goal. Although weapons earn money, there are plenty of other things we can earn money with. For now, Luoyu's population is too small. When our population reaches a couple million, then we can become truly independent, Yimo said. Suyuahua nodded and said, many of those working at Luoyu have moved their families here. Now, there's almost 200,000 people here. 60% of them are Chinese, and the rest comes from other countries around the world. We've also established airplane routes from many different countries, allowing those who want to move here to come for free. Okay, in that case, let's move Flowing Snake's Luoyu here as well. It is time. Yimo was really pleased with how fast Luoyu had developed. If the U.S. still wanted to attack them, they would have to think about their chances first. Once we move Luoyu here completely, the U.S. will react. They might even attack Luoyu at first notice and try to rob us of our things. We need to be ready for battle, Suyuahua said. Luoyu was already completely different from when they had first come there. Not only did they have the new air defense system, they also had Yixing's newly made electronic interference and GPS location systems. In fact, the electronic interference system might be seen as one of the main reasons why Luoyu could be so confident. Yimo suddenly got up and scanned everyone. We will be moving all of Luoyu pharmaceuticals to Luoyu, including the population of Flowing Snake. We have more than 200,000 people now. At the same time, let the 200 nautical miles of sea around Luoyu also belong to Luoyu. Suyuahua commented worriedly, the Commonwealth sea laws state that the regional sea of a nation must be no more than 12 nautical miles. Wouldn't we be giving the U.S. a reason to start the war that way? Suyuahua commented worriedly, the Commonwealth sea laws state that the regional sea of a nation must be no more than 12 nautical miles. Wouldn't we be giving the U.S. a reason to start the war that way? Yimo smiled. We wouldn't be the only ones with a sea region of 200 nautical miles. Many countries have surpassed 200 miles. Luoyu City is special too. We face the sea on 3 sides, so we need to increase our regional sea. Our main military power will be at sea. Besides, even if we don't assume even an inch of a regional sea, they will still start a war anyway. Hence, Yimo looked at everyone sitting down. As soon as Luoyu Pharmaceuticals comes to Luoyu City, we will immediately test the nuclear bomb. We need to flash our power in front of the eyes of those who have bad intentions for Luoyu City. I will say now that no matter whether it's on my land or in my regional sea, I am the one who decides things. Yes, that's the spirit. I shall be the first to support you, City Lord. Huang Yinian stood up excitedly. Yimo's words had gotten to everyone's hearts. Luoyu didn't have their own plane, tank, or gun production line. Instead, their first production line was a ship production line. The first product made there was their own carrier ship. This was a nuclear-powered carrier ship Yixing had designed in northern sand. Of course, we have the latest air defense system and electrical interference and positioning systems. Now, they can come anytime they want, Yixing said satisfyingly. Yimo stopped Yixing. Although we have made great progress in some areas, our overall military power is still far below that of the U.S. We're no match for them yet, but we merely need to have the capability to threaten them and make them have some concerns. The situation is such that we shouldn't start a conflict, at least not yet. We don't have the necessary power yet. Su Yuehua nodded. We're just able to compare our trump card with the mere superficial, openly visible portion of their power. Who knows what greater cards they have hidden? So I agree with City Lord's opinion. We're far from a match for the U.S. at the moment, not to mention that they have a lot of allies. If we were to fight, most parties would be helping them. We'll definitely fight sooner or later, but we don't know what the fight is going to be like. Right now, a few of our medical factories are making money, but once we start fighting, the cost will be huge. So increasing our tactical assets is still very important to us, Yimo said. He knew there was too little time left for Luoyu. If they had a few years more, the U.S. would only be a slightly large stepping stone for them. Zhang Jian continued, we have stored quite some food already, and large amounts of usable factories, a lot of foreign factories too, have started operation. We just haven't reached an appropriate scale in the agriculture department yet. Yimo waved his hand. Food is a crucial tactical asset. We must prepare plenty. It's unrealistic to try to produce all we need ourselves. We're spending quite some resources on the upcoming war, and we don't have enough people. So once we start the war, we need to think of ways to earn money from and during it. Earn money from the war? Usually, third parties earn from the wars between two other parties, so how can we earn from our own war? Yi Zifeng wondered. Yimo smiled. That won't necessarily be impossible. Our electronic interference system is the best in the world, and no one can match it right now. We can sell that. Even though I haven't experienced modern warfare myself, I know that the focus of it is long-range battle with a great emphasis on accuracy. Fighting someone with a strong electronic interference system and a strong GPS, those countries dependent on electronic warfare would be in for a nightmare. Although we have a small population and are on the disadvantage, numbers can be made up for in modern warfare. We just need to interfere with our enemies' attacks and efficiently locate their units. If our systems really are as strong as Yixing says they are, we'll have money to earn. Yixing immediately got up to make his point anew. Marshal brother, one can doubt my popularity with women, but not my ability to build things. Once we have our production line for planes, I will build the strongest electrical interference machine on Earth. Everyone understood Yimo's words. He meant that they would show the capabilities of their product in this war, and then sell it to other countries. If Luoyu's interference machine could interfere with U.S. missiles and other attacks, there was no way it wouldn't become famous. Understanding Yimo's idea, Yixing quickly shook his head. This isn't a mobile interference machine, though. We can only station it in Luoyu. And although it is able to stop any attack from a weapon within 1 kilometer and lock onto the weapon, it does use vast amounts of energy. You use the extreme energy stone. Yimo immediately understood Yixing. Yixing smiled bitterly. I didn't have any other choice. If I didn't make this thing, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. The power of the U.S. isn't something we can fight against with a mere 2 years of development. I'm sure that as long as we have enough missiles, we can strike down all the weapons they attack us with. Currently, our missiles are all imported from Russia, and even the intercontinental missiles were modified after import. We're still assembling our own missile production line. Yimo could understand why Yixing had used the stone. Although it was precious, they couldn't just store it and not use it. It seemed like these stones were more precious than spirit stones. Yimo sighed. It looked like he would have to go to northern sand to get the other 4 as well. So that means we can't sell our interference system? Yimo was disappointed. Of course we can sell it. We can modify it and change the energy source to fuel. This way, the range would be greatly reduced to only a few hundred meters, but at least then we could attach it to planes. Yixing smiled. Okay, then we'll sell this modified plane idea of yours, Yimo said. That would earn money for sure. That sounds good, but there are 3 other issues to it. First, the system needs our own engine to operate. Our engine is currently the best in the world. Of course, I can simplify it down, and even the simplified version will shock the world. Second, we don't have a plane production line. Third, if we sell our interference system, it won't take long for it to be analyzed and understood, Yixing said. Yimo smiled. I'm not afraid of that. No one can analyze or understand how our Luoyu seals our pills as I have the ability to make those things unanalyzable. Likewise, I'll just inscribe a sealing formation at the most important part of the interference machine. That way, if one tries to open the internal structure of the machine, the formation will destroy it. So, we'll do it. CEO Zhang, you can assist Yixing in assembling a plane production line. This is very important. Try to import things from other countries and modify it. That'll save some time. Big brother, do you want the countries who intend to buy the interference machine to first admit Luoyu's independence? Yi Zifeng asked. Yimo nodded. He wasn't afraid of the U.S., but if he wanted to survive on Earth, international status was very important. If no country helped him, then no matter how strong Luoyu was, they wouldn't be able to live well. The U.S. president gathered his cabinet and held a meeting. This was their second time having a meeting due to Luoyu. Luoyu took over Sinai and is amassing a population from people all over the world. They are now mass buying weapons. I think that if we weren't so far away from them, their Russian missiles would already be at our feet. I'm regretful about Senator Harry's suggestion to let them develop. The naval commander stood up and said, Luoyu is massively developing their naval power, and if they were to fight, the first battle would be at sea. I think General Derek is right. We shouldn't have let Luoyu develop. We should have attacked Sinai at first notice. I think that now, our main task is to attack and take back what is ours, the Minister of Defense said. I think General Derek is right. We shouldn't have let Luoyu develop. We should have attacked Sinai at first notice. I think that now, our main task is to attack and take back what is ours, the Minister of Defense said. Harry frowned and didn't say anything, but the person next to him did. Harry's decision was right at the time. The reason why we didn't succeed was because those cunning bastards saw through our intentions and used the time we gave them to quickly develop. That's what caused the situation we have today. He's right. I knew a lot of people would see through what we were planning, but I didn't expect the merchants from Luoyu to be able to see through it. This was my error. Since they already know about our plan, I don't think we need to keep waiting. I suggest we take action immediately, Harry said. I agree. Sinai has countless treasures, including the new element we found. I suggest we immediately take military action and take back Sinai and kick those criminals out. That place doesn't belong to them. Have we been planning for it for decades only for them to silently take it away? Someone else said. 80% of the people at the meeting agreed to immediately declare war on Sinai. The president frowned. It's not that he didn't want war, but there had been another even bigger discovery. Everyone, I'm also very regretful about Sinai, and this is our fault. But according to the FBI, Luoyu isn't as simple as we thought. Mr. Leo, please explain the situation. The president looked at a fat white man who was the head of the FBI. Usually he didn't come to these meetings, but he did today, which meant that there was indeed important news for everyone. Leo shook his flab and said seriously, 1 year ago, we sent 5 people to China to retrieve a certain woman from the plane the Black Sun Empire hijacked. Only she knew about our men on the plane, yet a year later, we haven't gotten any news from any of them. None of them ever came back. The men we sent were 4 mutants, one of them even being a level 3 lightning mutant. Leo looked around and continued. Then, we found the Black Star Island the Black Sun Empire abandoned. This seemed like just some private island, yet we found that that place was their main base for technology. On the island, we found a sealed vault. After testing it, we became certain that it had been meant for the storage of gold, but all the gold was gone. We found some of the most advanced technology on the planet in and around the vault, yet still all the gold had been taken away. I'm sure they didn't do it themselves. They wouldn't have to dig underground and break through walls to access their own gold. Leo, you mean that Luo Yu did that? Someone asked in shock. Leo nodded and said, yes, we suspect them strongly. That chase from the Pacific to the Indian Ocean also seems to have led to Sinai. The president said very seriously, many of you here might not yet know that we lost more than 4,000 tons of gold from our reserves in one night. And the U.S. banks all lost a few $100 million in one night as well. The hole at the site was very smooth, in exactly the same style as the ones we found in the gold vault at the Black Star Island. What? Our gold reserves have been robbed? The meeting room immediately burst into chaos. If Luo Yu really has such a potent weapon, I think it could inflict a huge blow on our Air Force and Navy, Leo said. Before, it was just a suspicion. We also doubted whether Luo Yu could make such a powerful weapon. Perhaps the route of the chase ending close to Sinai was just a coincidence. And although we lost our gold, it didn't have to have been caused by Luo Yu. It wouldn't be easy for anyone to ship away that much gold, much less from a heavily secured fortress. I carefully interrogated every troop that guarded the fort, and it's very unlikely that it was an inside job. The hole was supposedly made from the underground, so I checked the earth there, and there was indeed somewhat of a loosened-up path to the outside. The robber might have used a high-tech way of getting in. In any case, our surveillance systems were tricked and our gold stolen. If this technology really belongs to Luo Yu, then the weapon that sliced the patrol boat might have been made by them too. If their weapons are that advanced, I think we would be facing a very hard battle. Leo, if the FBI suspects Luo Yu, why don't you send people over to investigate? Luo Yu is taking in people from all over the world. Don't tell me you can't get in. Perhaps even I can go in. Harold from the NSA was unhappy. Leo knew how Harold felt and said with a bitter smile, remember what I said before? Our mutant department sent 5 members to China to take that woman back. And recently, we sent 57 people to Sinai. Yet again, none of them came back. Other than a few photos of busy construction works, we got nothing back. Aren't you the so-called most powerful investigation bureau in the world? One senator scorned. Just as the president wanted to say something, a new report was sent to him. After reading it, he immediately got up. Luo Yu is moving to Sinai, and the citizens from Flowing Snake will also be moving to Sinai. Everyone? Then there's nothing left to say. I suggest we immediately send our mothership and lock Sinai down, the naval commander said. The president obviously agreed, but they still had to make precise battle plans to ensure everything went right. It would be best if the Commonwealth Union could first announce they would investigate Luo Yu and then send its army. That would be much better than the U.S. having to send their army straight away. Harry knew what the president wanted and also got up. I agree, but we need to contact Ethiopia and Kenya first so that they seal off Luo Yu's retreat on land. I think we should let the Commonwealth Union bring up this battle plan, and then we can form a multinational army. Before we fight, I suggest we tell Luo Yu to move out of Sinai first. Of course, there's no way they would. Although I also support going to war, if Luo Yu really has that weapon of mass destruction, we would be in for some bad luck, someone said. If they really have the capability to produce such a weapon, then we should only seize Sinai even quicker. It'd be a pleasant gift, just like their pills, Harold smiled. Chinese New Year had just passed when suddenly, in only one night, Flowing Snake returned to being the barren place it had been before. A new round of war broke out in the world. Under the U.S.'s strong requests, the Commonwealth Union gathered a multinational army to kick Luo Yu out of Sinai. The U.S. believed that Luo Yu had taken their land and were bringing great instability to world peace by buying weapons en masse. Every member of the Commonwealth had the responsibility to put in effort for world peace and kick Luo Yu out of Sinai. When this statement was made, the whole world was shocked. Chapter 579. Luo Yu's Stance. Chapter 579. Luo Yu's Stance. International Federation was an international organization made up of all the countries in the world, with peacekeeping being just one of its functions. When the U.S. proposed to kick Luo Yu out of Sinai by force, they didn't expect that the International Federation wouldn't completely pass their proposal. Of the 5 greatest countries, China simply passed on voting, but Russia actually voted contra any military action against Luoyu. As long as there was one vote contra, the proposal couldn't be passed. Like that, the US wouldn't be able to send troops to Sinai blatantly. Russia had only gotten some weapon deals from Luoyu, though. Were they going to get on the US's bad side for a few $100 million? It wasn't the Cold War period anymore. There was no need to get on the US's bad side for a mere Luoyu, who only had 200,000 inhabitants. The way Russia did things was very strange, but 3 days later, because of the US's strong request, the International Federation held a vote for the second time. And what surprised everyone was that Russia also passed on voting this time. Like that, US could legitimately send an army to Luoyu. No one knew why the Russians had changed their decision. But that wasn't too important, and a week later, an alliance with the US as the head of it declared war on Luoyu in the name of freedom and democracy. 26 countries, and a total of 120,000 troops, with the US's army forming 90% of it. Most countries hadn't voted, and had sent their troops only after being given some special conditions by the US. There were 50,000 ground troops, 30,000 Navy Marines, an Air Force counting 10,000 men, and 30,000 men's worth of special assault squads. There were 380 tanks, 600 armored vehicles, 350 jets, 200 helicopters, and 70 ships. According to the battle plan they had made, the Union Army would come to Sinai from the Indian Ocean. Meanwhile, the ground troops would attack from the border with Ethiopia and Kenya. This would result in 2 battlefields and was called the swing tactic. Its purpose was to make the enemy unable to deal with the attacks on both sides and force them to the middle. They wouldn't be able to get away, and so eventually they would have to surrender. The reason why they used this tactic was because the US didn't want any of Luoyu's high-level technical personnel to escape. Perhaps, surrendering without conditions was the best choice of action for Luoyu. The day the Union Army was mobilized, the greatest betting organization opened a bet for the war. The bet was on how long it would take for the army to take over Sinai. The odds for Luoyu winning were 1:100. No one believed Luoyu would win, so even if the odds were 1:1000, no one would bet on Luoyu. Yet randomly, a certain piece of news shocked the world. An anonymous person had bet 500 million on Luoyu winning. This caught the attention of the media and made Luoyu, and this anonymous person, a bit more mysterious. What shocked the world even more was Luoyu's reaction to the war. Luoyu declared war on the US. Sui Weihua said on Luoyu's news channel that Luoyu had nuclear power and was going to test their first warhead close to South Africa. If anyone dared attack Luoyu, Luoyu wouldn't mind using their nuclear weapons. With Luoyu's declaration, the US grew furious. They didn't expect Luoyu to grow this troublesome in such a short while. For some stupid extra gains, they had allowed Luoyu to grow so strong. At the same time, they were also worried. Even if they could blow Luoyu to pieces, if Luoyu dropped even one bomb on their country, it would be catastrophic. The US also suspected that Luoyu's nukes had been supplied by another country, either China or Russia. The whole world was shocked. Some small countries that had also joined the war were scared. They weren't afraid of the US having nukes, but they sure were afraid of Luoyu having nukes. If they cornered Luoyu too hard, Luoyu really might just throw a nuke at them. Even if Luoyu was eventually annihilated, they wouldn't be able to handle the losses. 9 countries quickly left the Union. The second day, a huge mushroom cloud appeared, and the world was sunk into silence. Another 5 countries left the Union. Although the amount of soldiers in the army stayed mostly the same, this was a blow to morale. The Union quickly held another meeting. No one thought that some entrepreneurship would be able to obtain nukes in a mere year of development. Although the International Federation requested Luoyu to participate in the meeting, Luoyu refused without hesitation. They wouldn't mind coming, but the Federation would have to admit Luoyu's independence first, and their army would have to retreat. The US was angry. They couldn't possibly retreat. If they were easily scared off by just one nuke, how would they remain the police of the Pacific Ocean? So what if Luoyu had nukes? They had them too. We must wipe them clean before they can react. someone ordered. The U.S. government was irate, but the people didn't agree. When they found out that Luoyu had nukes and had the capability to detonate it from far away, a mass protest began. The people didn't agree to sending the army to the other side of the ocean to invade a new country that had nukes and had nothing to do with the U.S. When the International Federation invited Luoyu to the meeting once more, Emo just sneered. This was just like the battles among sects on Luoyu continent. When a new sect arose, the other sects would gather together to pressure the new sect. If they couldn't get from it what they wanted, they would just annihilate the new sect. But if they went there and found that the sect leader was absurdly powerful, the pressure tactics would be turned into meet and greets. Power, no matter where, no matter when, was still the most important. Emo sighed. He wouldn't even be able to find a peaceful place to live without power. Although Luoyu requested for the retreat of the Union Army, the order was never made. At the same time, the Union Army undersized lead was in the Indian Ocean already, and it would be half a day before they reached Luoyu's regional sea. The whole world's attention was gathered on Luoyu, and by the time it became known that the third meeting had resulted in nothing, the first fleet of the Union Army entered Luoyu's sea. When the first missile was fired at Luoyu, the war began. Chapter 580. Not a battle on equal grounds. Chapter 580. Not a battle on equal grounds. There was no probing or any small-scale attacks. Luoyu's nuke had touched the U.S.'s bottom line, and they wrought lightning-fast attacks upon Luoyu. 120,000 elite soldiers attacked Luoyu from 3 sides. In their eyes, Luoyu was a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. They would be taking over Luoyu in the shortest time and break all records. If Luoyu didn't have any nukes, perhaps they would have taken it slowly. The Union launched a full-scale attack. Report: our radars are being strongly interfered with. We cannot lock onto targets. Report: their interference system is jamming our systems. We cannot make precise attacks. Report: their interference system is too strong. Our electrical systems are unable to operate. Report: my plane has been locked on by their radar. The command center of the Union Army was dumbfounded. Since when could any new startup company make such strong military interference systems? Modern warfare meant electronic warfare. If the opposition's interference rendered them unable to lock onto targets, then how could the battle even be fought? And their planes were getting locked onto. What would happen next was obvious. The commanding officer at the command center was sweating. They had planned on lightning-fast warfare, the favorite tactic of Germany in WW2. Yet now, the command officer could only stand dazed. Even Russia wouldn't have been able to have such a strong interference system. Their planes were strongly interfered with very soon after they took flight. How were they to fight like that? If Luoyu had made such an interference machine, would the nukes then also be theirs? Thinking about this, Peter immediately ordered, "Retreat! Retreat immediately!" But his order was a little late. All the planes that Luoyu's radar had locked onto became blind, and they hadn't even arrived above Luoyu yet. Rumble, rumble, Emo saw countless anti-air missiles light up the sky in red as fighter jets were taken down accurately all over the place. The jets could muster no resistance under such strong interference, and the pilots could only rely on their own skills to dodge the missiles. The jets had no choice but to try their luck and shoot some missiles at random, but even if they aimed well, the missiles would be stopped by the space shield defense system. The troops who hadn't reached land yet watched the fireworks in the sky in utter shock. Since when did the world have such accurate missile systems? Emo sneered. He knew he wouldn't need to worry about these planes. Although Luoyu didn't fly even a single plane themselves, Yixing hadn't been bluffing indeed. Emo was sure that Yixing's interference machine and radar system were unbeatable in this world. Emo was even more sure that Yixing was also not from this world, but the difference between him and Emo was that he had lost a lot of his memories. This electrical interference battle made the Union Army defenseless. The missiles Yixing had modified were not only faster, they also had a longer range and were more accurate. F***CK, you want to invade Luoyu with this garbage radar and electronic system? I overestimated you. You wasted one of my extreme energy stones. What a disappointment. Yixing looked at the falling jets and felt bored. It would seem that my help isn't needed in this area, Yimo said to himself and disappeared. He knew that although Luo Yu had spent a lot of resources developing their navy, the navy was still Luo Yu's weakest spot. What he needed to do at the moment was to go annihilate the Union Army's naval power. Yimo knew that it was impossible to capture 80 ships, so he just sliced them open right in the middle. The nuclear submarines also didn't escape the same fate, and in a short while, Yimo had annihilated 20 ships. Countless soldiers struggled on the ocean surface. They hadn't even seen their opponent and already lost 20 ships. What weapon was this? At this moment, Luo Yu's ships neared the Union Army and announced that those who surrendered would not be killed. The captain of one guard ship was extremely furious and immediately ordered to attack. But before the cannons of his ship could be raised, it was destroyed by an unknown weapon. One missile submarine was also sneaking up on Luo Yu's fleet. Yet before they could fire any missiles, it was sliced in half by Yimo. The intense water pressure ripped the people inside into pieces. Yimo flew out of the sea and took an essence chi pill. Good thing he had concocted some, or he would have been running out of chi if not for Yixing's help. Yimo was sure that he wouldn't have been able to stop the Union Army's attack. Seeing his ships be taken out by an unknown weapon one by one, Sai's face was green. His ship's scan wasn't finding anything within 100 nautical miles from Luo Yu. Huang Yinian felt very satisfied. If not for Yimo telling him not to fire at carrier ships, he wouldn't have been able to resist the temptation to throw a couple of missiles over. Although he didn't know why the enemy's ships were sinking one by one, he knew it was related to the mysterious city lord Yimo and Yixing. Although Luo Yu didn't fire any large amounts of cannons or missiles, a few were still being sent out every once in a while, sinking the struggling soldiers into the sea. These people were demons. They didn't even let the drowning soldiers live. Sai didn't dare send out any of the remaining jets on the carrier, because he knew that they would just serve as target practice to Luo Yu. This wasn't a battle on equal levels. Before the battle, they had been sure that it wouldn't be a battle on equal grounds, but they had thought that they would be the ones at the higher level, yet the reality was exactly the opposite. No one could have thought that Luo Yu would actually be that strong. Luo Yu's electronic warfare power was out of this world. They had designed something beyond their age. This was humiliating. The commander had never fought such a humiliating battle in his life. He was sure that no one could have expected Luo Yu to be this strong. If Luo Yu had any great ambitions, then Sai didn't dare keep thinking. Chapter 581. Slaughter. Chapter 581. Slaughter, ha ha ha. HM, are those captives? Are you surrendering? I'm warning you, if you don't surrender now, we'll launch full-scale attacks, you know? Huang Yinian laughed. Then, he waved his hand, and a missile shot out from the ship. Sai watched from a close distance as that missile easily pierced through a light guard ship as it disappeared from the sea with a spin. Sai got a fresh report that all his ships had been locked onto. Sai could no longer endure the horror of desperation. He knew that if he didn't surrender, the enemy's missiles would strike them soon. His fleet would disappear under the power of that unseen weapon. If tens of thousands of soldiers died due to him, that would be a grave sin. He surrendered and rose the white flag. A lucky fighter jet saw Sai's surrendering flag and did a ghost-like turn in the sky. It shot straight down towards the sea. Just as everyone was shouting in a panic, it made another sudden turn and charged into the sky after barely scraping the sea surface. Then, it immediately disappeared into the clouds, flying towards Ethiopia. At the same time, a missile shot at where the plane had skid past the water and made a huge explosion. Everyone was shocked by this scene. Yimo looked at the disappearing jet and sighed. This guy's piloting skills were top-notch. He dodged a missile which had locked onto his plane purely with his own skills. Yimo even simply let the guy go. Huang Yinian was very disappointed. He hadn't even gotten to properly open fire before the Union Army surrendered. However, they captured 4 carriers this time, which made Huang Yinian rejoice. They also got 30 other ships of different kinds. Half of the soldiers who fell in the water died, and the rest was captured alive. Compared to the easy fight the Navy was having, the ground troops had the hardest battle. The general was as expectedly Sandow, But the commander was a guy called Liang Di from the Blu-ray Corporation. He was a Chinese soldier and had survived many wars, but the army of the Alliance was far from what Luo Yu could compare with in terms of quality. If it wasn't due to some geographical advantages, perhaps Luo Yu would have been defeated immediately upon contact. Even though it wasn't now, after 2 clashes, Luo Yu's casualties were still the same as the opposition's. The second battlefield was at Shitan Valley. The swing tactic involved the Navy starting their bombardment first, and then a few hundred planes would drop bombs. Luo Yu's barely 10,000 ground troops would then quickly be decimated. Afterwards, the Union Army would go past Shitan Valley and take the Luo Yu highlands. Yet before the planes could even arrive above Luo Yu, they were all taken out. Hence, the commander of the ground forces of the Union Army could only order to force their way through in the attack on Shitan Valley. Although they had a lot of people, they couldn't spread their troops out in the narrow valley. Due to all these disadvantages, the Union Army had the same casualty count as Luo Yu. One could see that the quality of the soldiers of Luo Yu was far inferior, though. But luckily, after the first bloodbath-like phase of the war, Luo Yu's army might have decreased in numbers, but it increased in battle power. It was certain that if the enemy's ground forces kept attacking like that, Luo Yu wouldn't be able to hold the valley for long. But watching their planes constantly fall from the sky, the enemy commander's face was pale. He knew that their upper hand would only be temporary. Once their air force was completely taken out, they would be done for. What scared him the most was Luo Yu's anti-air defense. The Union Army's ferocious fleet of jets could muster no resistance whatsoever in the sky. Luo Yu hadn't even had to send out a single plane to decimate their air force with just their defensive system. This was impossible. No country had such powerful air defense capabilities. Yet the reality was right in front of his eyes. Luo Yu did. Our retreat. The commander saw the planes decrease more and more. If their army stayed there, it would be nothing but suicide. The soldiers didn't understand why they were ordered to retreat when they had the upper hand. But as soldiers, they had to comply with orders. But even then, the retreat order came a bit too late. Before the troops could retreat, Luo Yu's fighter jets rose into the sky. The commander realized then that their own anti-air system couldn't lock onto any of Luo Yu's planes. Their interference was too strong. This rendered all their anti-air missiles useless. A missile without eyes wasn't a missile. The Union Army could only use some simplistic anti-air cannons and machine guns to fight those jets, but those were just like mere tickles to the fighter jets. As bombs were dropped from the air, they blew the armored vehicles and tanks to oblivion. The commander looked on with a pale face. He knew they were done for, completely done for. The enemy's jets had crushed their soldiers' hopes. Surrender. There was no other way out except for surrendering. When the Air Force had been completely decimated, the Navy chose to surrender, and 1 hour later, the ground forces also surrendered. This shocking invasion of Luo Yu took, as predicted by specialists, less than a day. A lightning battle amongst lightning battles. The only difference was that everyone had gotten the sides wrong. The Union Army wasn't able to last even a day and was completely annihilated or had surrendered. 120,000 troops had come, and after a day of intense battle, 30,000 died at sea, while 13,000 died on the ground. Some escaped into the forests, and the remaining 70,000 were captured alive, including Head Commander Sai, Air Force Commander Peter, and the Ground Forces Commander. Luo Yu also seized more than 600 tanks and armored vehicles and 130 planes and helicopters. Luo Yu lost 600 soldiers, 1 plane, 12 tanks. From their navy, no one had died. This was a complete victory, bound to become the most famous battle in modern warfare. After the results of the battle spread out, the whole world trembled. A certain defeat had been turned into a complete victory. No one could have expected this outcome. The most famous military theoretical specialist Jack Longher immediately came up with a new theory of modern warfare, predicting that it would from then on mostly be based on interference and anti-interference. He said in his theory that, if you don't have a strong interference and radar system, and you wish to invade an advanced country, then I suggest you might as well put away your radar and missiles. Perhaps your best hope at victory is for your soldiers to carry swords and spears. Famous American military specialist Malone also pointed out that Luo Yu's electrical warfare had surpassed the current age. The nuclear warhead they had tested was also beyond the times. The fission element in it wasn't even uranium-235 or plutonium-239, but a completely new element. But what made the world truly speechless was Luo Yu's spokesperson's, Su Yuowa's, speech. Chapter 582. The War Continues. Chapter 582. The war continues after the battle. Su Yuehua made a speech that was broadcasted throughout the world. I'm very regretful about the Union Army invading Luo Yu and causing us infrastructure damage and troop loss at a massive scale. We've lost heavily in this war, and our economy has been greatly affected already. Yet the war shall continue. It will not stop now. Luo Yu is not a place everyone can invade and leave as they please. I hereby announce that if we don't get a definite answer to our demands within a week, we just might be the first to strike at some countries. I believe the citizens of all countries are friendly people. They are like us, enjoying peace and disliking war. However, some people for their own selfish interests have started a war with us, causing innocent people to die. They are criminals. We don't like war, but we don't fear it either. I'm telling those who harbor ill will towards us right now that if you still wish to invade us, come, our missiles will welcome your arrival. Due to the ravages of war, our economy has suffered greatly. In order to recover our production levels, we see ourselves forced to sell some of our high-tech products. I believe everyone has recognized the worth of our interference system in the recent battle. It's at a top-of-the-world standard. Due to our losses in the war, I hereby announce the beginning of our sale of this system to the world. Of course, not every country can use our interference system. There will naturally be some conditions. Other than that, I would like to mention that Luo Yu wishes to be a nation of peace, so we welcome people from all over the world to come settle here. Our land is limited, though, so if you want to come to Luo Yu, you need to act fast. Thank you, everyone. Luo Yu's speech made the whole world speechless. They had seized almost all the equipment the invading army had and captured more than 70,000 soldiers. It was rumored that these soldiers were doing hard labor at Luo Yu. Yet Luo Yu proclaimed that it had suffered a huge economic loss. It was the Union Army that suffered an economic loss. Luo Yu proclaimed that they loved peace. Yet from their declaration, it would seem they didn't want peace at all. They were holding all the soldiers captive and were saying that the war was still on. But it was indeed Luo Yu who had been invaded this time. Sinai indeed didn't belong to anyone before, and Luo Yu got it first. The news of the war between Luo Yu and the Union Army was everywhere. Even little kids knew that Luo Yu is strong. Their interference machine was invincible. Yet even though it was such a precious thing, Luo Yu actually planned to sell it. Everyone would buy it unless they were an idiot. Luo Yu wasn't selling without conditions, though They hadn't said it explicitly, but it was obvious what their condition would be: to admit their independence. Luo Yu had the ability to stop even nukes outside of their territory, and even nuclear bombs may only cause some minor losses to Luo Yu. Meanwhile, Luo Yu had extremely accurate locating and lock-on capabilities. Meanwhile, the Union was scared ever since Luo Yu had said the war would go on. Those who had left halfway or didn't join the alliance of countries felt lucky they didn't fight Luo Yu. One could see that the Union Army had completely pissed off Luo Yu this time. Meetings between countries went on incessantly. During one discussion about Luo Yu and their threats, the U.S. president couldn't control his anger and smashed a glass cup on the floor. He didn't understand how a mere Luo Yu, after merely 1 year of developing, could have such strong technological prowess, completely decimating the army of the alliance of countries and capturing more than 70,000 people. When news of the defeat reached the U.S., large-scale protests began. Although the president was furious, the meeting still had to go on. More than 70,000 captives and 50,000 dead. This huge loss meant that no matter how he dealt with it, he would be impeached. The people were angry that he had started the war, but that wasn't the main point. The main point was that the war had ended in defeat. He would forever be the sinner of the U.S. He knew that if he cast all concerns aside, he could probably start a second war. But Luo Yu's interference machine was simply too strong. Even if he did start another war, he could easily imagine the bad result it would have. The third day after the battle, representatives of the U.S. and the 12 countries that had participated, as well as Luo Yu's representative, came to a neutral country's capital to hold a meeting. The alliance's first request was for Luo Yu to release all the captives and give back all the ships. They would pay for the tanks and other weapons. This condition immediately made Yu Miaodong laugh on the spot. She said mercilessly, "Were we the ones who invaded others and were then defeated?" The representatives knew that it was impossible for Luo Yu to agree to that, but the higher they set the start, the easier it would be to negotiate. In the end, Luo Yu just gave 3 conditions. Firstly, the 12 countries had to compensate Luo Yu's economic losses with a sum of $120 billion US. Secondly, they had to admit Luo Yu's independence. Thirdly, the 70,000 soldiers should not have to be released. The first and second conditions weren't too bad. Although 120 billion was quite a lot, it wasn't bad when it was split up among 12 countries. One could only say that Luo Yu hadn't seen the truly big money yet. But the third condition? The captives had to be released. Otherwise, wouldn't the whole negotiation be meaningless? They agreed to the first and second conditions almost instantly, but the third one was discussed for a week, before they finally reached an agreement. The captives would be sent back in return for money. Eventually, 12 countries ended up paying Luo Yu a total of $300 billion US, and Luo Yu released all the captives. But what the people of the world hadn't expected was that Luo Yu promised that when their first batch of interference machines came out, Luo Yu would give 24 of the machines to the 12 countries as a peacekeeping gift. No one knew why Luo Yu would give up their secret to other parties. But that didn't matter at the moment. The amount of hundreds of billions of dollars Luo Yu received was extremely crucial to them at the time. With the support of such wealth, Luo Yu wouldn't need to worry about anything in the near future. They would be able to just focus on developing their technology. Chapter 583. I'll wait for you. Chapter 583. I'll wait for you. If there was one thing more stunning than the result of the battle, then it was that the Shalawizi Corporation went bankrupt. They had hosted a bet on the result of the battle, with the odds of Luo Yu winning being 1 to 100, yet someone had actually bet on Luo Yu winning, and the person seemed to have known exactly how much the corporation had. He bet 500 million, and the corporation barely managed to pay him $50 billion US, but after that, they declared bankruptcy. It became the greatest mystery who won the 50 billion, and absolutely no one knew who it was. Because Luo Yu won the war and received huge compensations, and because they had their position in the lucrative pharmaceutical industry, Luo Yu became very wealthy, and all the people in the world wanted to move to Luo Yu. A newly developed place with such strong military capability made everyone who went there feel safe. But the standards for moving to Luo Yu were getting higher and higher. Only the soldiers who had served in the army could move their family to Luo Yu without any requisites. New immigrants had to follow new rules. Many of those who had moved to Luo Yu early on celebrated their decision. Those new immigrants had to pay large sums of money. Luo Dongsheng also rejoiced that he came at the right time. Not long after he arrived, the Luo Yu War happened. He thought that Luo Yu wouldn't be able to survive and felt tragic about his fate, but then, Luo Yu crushed the Union Army. Now, both his girlfriend and him worked at the management level of Luo Yu and had 10 times higher salaries than ever. He also had his own new residence. This made them feel very happy. Han Yin thought only their Guanghan sect would re-establish their sect at Luo Yu. Yet unexpectedly a big sect like Lian Hangjing Temple also moved to Luo Yu. At the same time, a few other small sects also came to Luo Yu. When Liang Jun and Lu Na saw Yixing, they finally came to understand why Luo Yu's interference system was so terrifying. Many countries visited Luo Yu, politely asking for cooperation, and they all acknowledged Luo Yu's independence. Yimo didn't like this sort of troublesome matters, so he let Suyuehua deal with everything. He eventually also just pushed her to the seat of city lord. Suyuehua knew that Yimo didn't like those matters, and she knew that Yimo's final goal didn't lie with Luo Yu, so she didn't reject the role. Suiwehua also knew all too well that those friendly-looking countries had come for their interference machines. But the ones they were selling were far weaker than the immobile version that was based in Luoyu. But these people didn't know, so Luoyu was able to sell lots. Each machine was sold for 1 billion USD, but even then, before Luoyu could even complete their production line, they received 100 orders. Even Yemo had to admit that the weapon-dealing business was more lucrative than pharmaceuticals. Large sums of money flowed into Luoyu, and large sums flew out as well, being exchanged for ships upon ships of materials. Luoyu grew day by day, and only those who lived at Luoyu could properly feel it. In the same month, Luoyu announced the establishment of their own government and currency. The world-renowned Luoyu Immortal Hospital also went back to work. Standing atop a high mountain, Yemo sighed as he looked at the Luoyu that was changing daily. Ever since he had come there, although his cultivation hadn't progressed much, he had finally made some achievements. At least he could now say that he had built and protected his own city. A faint aroma came from behind him, and Yemo knew that it was Ning Qingxue. He embraced her and started feeling a little excited. He remembered that a large part of the reason why he built his own city was due to Ning Qingxue's wish. I finally completed our wish and built Luoyu City. Yemo looked at the busy city and felt a sense of accomplishment. Thank you. Ning Qingxue knew that Yemo had built the city for a great part due to her. She had wanted a peaceful and worryless environment to live in, and Luoyu was just that. Before Ning Qingxue could finish, Yemo kissed her. After a long while, Ning Qingxue panted and pinched Yemo sulkingly. It's still day at night. Yemo laughed and looked into the distant sky and said, Qingxue, I want to wait until you reach foundation establishment state. If you Ning Qingxue interrupted, I don't care about any foundation establishment state. I just want to be with you. Sometimes I imagine a life where I am almost never able to see you, and I feel scared. If it wasn't for you, perhaps I wouldn't have ever become happy in my entire life. Thank you for letting me know that love is so mesmerizing. Looking at Ning Qingxue as she was feeling emotional, Yemo brushed his hand through her hair. If I hadn't gone to Shenongjia that day, would we have passed by each other for forever? Ning Qingxue's voice was very soft, and her eyes were cloudy as she looked at Yemo with softness. Yemo was dazed. If Ning Qingxue hadn't gone to find him at Shenongjia, what would have happened? Perhaps he would have died. Even if he wouldn't have remembered anyone called Ning Qingxue. There would only have been Luoying in his heart. Suddenly, Ning Qingxue held Yemo tightly as though fearing he would disappear. Luckily, I went. If I hadn't, perhaps I would have lost you forever. I don't know what I would be like without you. Perhaps I would go crazy. She didn't know when Yemo fell in love with her, but she knew that it had nothing to do with her looks. She thought of Su Jingwen and how she felt towards Yemo. Ning Qingxue's womanly instincts had made her easily notice that Su Jingwen also liked Yemo. What would have happened if it had been Su Jingwen who went to save Yemo at Shenongjia? Yemo lovingly held Ning Qingxue tighter and spoke gently. Qingxue, you and Susu are the most excellent women there are. It's my fortune that I could be with any of you. When I opened my eyes at the bottom of the cliff and the first thing I saw was you, I knew I would never be able to forget you. When I felt the wounds on your body and saw that fruit you bit, I knew that I had fallen in love with you. Thank you, Qingxue. Ning Qingxue thought of Susu and was dazed. Wasn't that her auntie? But she soon calmed down. Susu wasn't her biological auntie. She was about the same age as her. And even if Susu was her real auntie, she wouldn't want to leave Yemo no matter what. Deeply in love, Yemo and Ning Qingxue no longer remembered that it was day as they were immersed into a fiery kiss, both of them unable to relent. In the distance, Luo Fei saw the two and sighed. She worried for her little martial sister Luo Xian. She could tell that Luo Xian liked Yemo, but Ning Qingxue was no lesser than Luo Xian in terms of looks or feelings for Yemo. Furthermore, these two were with each other every day. After who knows how long, the two stopped. They just looked at each other without saying anything. Ning Qingxue's face was red, and her body was hot. She didn't mind what Yemo did to her. She loved him. Yemo was in a similar state, but he had a spirit-cleansing chant and could control himself. Qingxue, I'm going out for now. But if we still can't reach foundation establishment state in 3 years, and there's still no news of Susu, then we will hold a big wedding in Luoyu, Yimo promised softly. I'll wait for you. Ning Qingshue's voice seemed like it came from the edges of heaven, yet at the same time, it resonated at the very bottom of Yimo's heart. Chapter 584. Past Opportunity. Chapter 584. Past Opportunity. With Luoyu on the right track, Yimo believed that even if some countries still coveted Luoyu, they wouldn't dare challenge Luoyu that easily. The more time Luoyu had to develop, the more powerful it would become. Hence, Yimo wanted to go out and take care of some of his own things. He had wasted a lot of time on building Luoyu. As a cultivator, his main focus should be on finding resources and cultivating. For one, Yimo needed to go find that white fox. If it could really find spirit stones and herbs, he would be earning big. Of course, the most important thing was that Yimo wanted to go find Luoying. He loved both Ning Qingxue and Luoying, and he didn't want Luoying to miss out on the wedding. Whether it was this life or the past, his master or Susu, Luo Ying's position would never change in his heart. Last time he got news of her being in the desert, he couldn't go right away due to Luo Yu's matters. So this time he would investigate everything properly for sure. At midnight, Yimo and Ning Qingxue went back to their home, where Han Yin had apparently been waiting for them. Seeing them come home, Han Yin immediately got up. Han Yin, do you have something going on? Yimo looked at Han Yin strangely. She usually wouldn't come out much, and the location their sect had chosen was quite far off. Lian Hangjing Temple had also built their sect in the same valley with Yimo's help. Han Yin's face wasn't relaxed. She would have never thought that Yimo who went to Beijing for just a few 100,000 from Li who would someday reach his current state. Did your grandfather tell you to come? Is it about the interference machine? You can just go and talk to Sister Yuehua about it. Yimo smiled. He guessed that Han Yin should have come for that, but she should focus on cultivation. Han Yin shook her head. No, although it was Grandpa who told me to come, it wasn't for the interference machine. Grandpa wants to invite you to Beijing, and if it weren't for the special circumstances, Grandpa would have come here himself. Yimo immediately understood. Han Zixin represented the Chinese military, so it wasn't suitable for him to come at such a sensitive time in person. Yimo nodded. Okay, I was about to leave anyways, so I'll drop by Beijing. Old Han owes me large sums of ores, so I need to get them. Han Yin said thank you somewhat uneasily, and then turned to leave. She was truly grateful to Yimo that her sect could have such a good cultivation environment. The snow fox matter wasn't too urgent, anyway. After Yimo left Luoyu, he wanted to go to Ninghai and see Tang Beiwei. Although Tang Beiwei liked that small house and didn't want to leave, Yimo was still worried and tried to visit her often. Yimo arrived at Westlake Restaurant. This had been his first high-class restaurant, and it was Su Jingwen who treated him to it back then. Yimo subconsciously scanned his spirit sense around and actually found Su Jingwen sitting by herself in the room she had eaten in with him last time. Yimo had a great impression of her, so he immediately walked into the room. Jingwen, why are you sitting here by yourself? Aren't you with Beiwei? Yimo asked. Yimo. Su Jingwen got up immediately. She saw Yimo smiling in front of her and subconsciously rubbed her eyes. She had just been thinking about him. How could he have appeared in front of her eyes so suddenly? Are you all right? Yimo subconsciously reached out his hand to grab her wrist and check how she was. But Su Jingwen grabbed Yimo's hand first. It's really you. Yimo? How did you know I was here? Are you forgetting me already? Of course it's really me. I was just passing by here and remembered that this was the place you treated me for the first time, so I came over to have a look. I didn't expect you to really be here. Anyway, you're getting prettier and prettier, aren't you? Yimo knew that it had to be the effect of the face-preserving pill. Su Jingwen's face blushed, and she forgot that Yimo's hands were still in her hands. Thank you for still remembering me. Su Jingwen felt like she didn't know what to say. Yimo could feel that Su Jingwen had feelings for him, but he already had Luoying and Ning Qingxue, so he was more than content. He didn't know what words to comfort Su Jingwen with. The door was opened once again, and a young man holding flowers appeared at the door. He looked in shock at Su Jingwen as she held Yimo's hand and was sent into a daze. Only then did Su Jingwen realize that she was still holding Yimo's hand. She blushed and quickly let go. Immediately, the atmosphere became awkward. Sorry, I didn't know you guys were on a date. I'll be going first. Yimo just realized that Su Jingwen had been waiting for someone here, and that he was being a third wheel. He had some mixed feelings, though. But then, he immediately woke up and realized that he couldn't give her anything. So why was he having mixed feelings about her seeing someone else? He was being too domineering. Thinking about this, Yimo shook his head. He wasn't happy with his subconscious reaction. By the way, is Beiwei at home? Yimo asked before he left. HM? She said she was going to a student gathering yesterday and that she would be coming back today. Yet I waited for her for a whole day and she still didn't come back, and I felt bored, Su Jingwen subconsciously answered. Student gathering? Yimo was surprised. It seemed like Tang Beiwei had gone to Tandu. Yimo would be going to the Duanhang Ranges to find the bitter 10 years and the entrance to the inner hidden sects, and he would be passing by Tandu. Thank you. Well then, I won't be disturbing you anymore. Goodbye then. Yimo was getting more and more uncomfortable. He felt a bit hypocrite. He was just friends with Su Jingwen. So why did he feel uncomfortable about her going on a date with someone else? He shook his head and walked out of the restaurant quickly. Yimo, wait. It's not what you think. By the time Su Jingwen reacted, Yimo had already disappeared. She immediately went outside to chase after him. Jingwen. The man saw Su Jingwen run away and called out to her. Zhang Lailin, how did you even know I was here? There is only one person I like, and it's not you. Sorry, but I'll be going now. Then, Su Jingwen started her car and left rapidly. She was regretting, not what had happened today, but what had happened before. She had always had good feelings towards Yimo and even liked him a little, but her embarrassment had made her unwilling to admit that. If she didn't have special feelings for Yimo, she wouldn't have kept Yimo's first present all the way until today. She wouldn't have let Yimo dance that first dance with her. She had met Yimo first, yet she lost to Ning Qingxue who came later. She knew Yimo more than Ning Qingxue in the past, but she didn't dare admit her feelings. Now, she had lost that first unexplainable first love feeling. Ning Qingxue was more brave than her. She knew she liked Yimo and chased after him without relenting. Up till today, Su Jingwen still didn't know why a prideful woman like Ning Qingxue would love Yimo so wholeheartedly. Seeing Su Jingwen leave, Zhang Lailin dropped the flowers in his hands. He had always been very prideful. He was smart, handsome, and he was also the son of the mayor. Zhang Lailin wasn't like many other young masters. He never went out and about doing bad things, and he was conservative with women. He had been the ultimate Prince Charming in the eyes of many pretty girls, yet today, he was rejected. At the moment, Yimo was standing outside of Tandu University. He didn't think that his sister would spend 2 days on a student gathering, and it was only a 1-hour flight from there to Ninghai. Chapter 585. Treat to a Meal. Chapter 585. Treat to a Meal. It was the second time Yimo came to Tandu University. The first time he came, he annihilated Nye Wubian from the Nine Moons sect. He didn't know if the current university would still be like before. Yimo walked into the university campus confidently. The guards didn't stop him. There were always a lot of students going in and out. It seemed like this place was different from before, and those domineering guards were gone. Magical Dr. Yi? Tang Beiwei's big brother. A crisp girl's voice interrupted Yimo's thoughts. Yimo turned back and saw a white-skinned girl of average looks appear before him. You're Yuan? Yimo remembered. It was this girl who lent her phone to Yimo but had her legs broken by Qian He. Yimo had saved her in the end. Yup, it's me, brother Yi. You're here for Beiwei, right? I really didn't expect to be able to see you again. Beiwei was talking about how long it had been since she last saw you only yesterday, Chong Yuan said. Yimo was also happy to see a familiar face and immediately said, Yeah, I came to find Beiwei. Where is she? Beiwei went with us to a student gathering at Shilong restaurant. She said she met someone she knew there and left early. She said she would come back to stay at my place tonight. Brother Yi, why don't you stay here for now and wait for her to come back? I said I would treat you to dinner last time, but I haven't had the chance to. You must give me this chance today, Chong Yuanyuan said. Beiwei said she was coming back tonight? Why is her phone turned off? Although Yimo didn't really have to worry about her, she was still a girl after all. Chong Yuanyuan immediately said, it probably ran out of battery. When we left for the restaurant, her phone was already almost out of battery. Don't worry, Beiwei will be back by tonight for sure. Do you know who the person she met was? Yimo knew that Beiwei didn't know that many people. Chong Yuanyuan shook her head. I don't know. When I looked from the side of the room, I just managed to see his back. I think it was a middle-aged man. A middle-aged man? Yimo frowned. Brother Yi, don't worry, let's go eat. After we finish eating, Beiwei should be back, Chong Yuanyuan quickly said. She didn't want Yimo to worry too much. Okay, let's go to Shilong restaurant then. Yimo nodded. If he managed to find the entrance to the pocket world this time, he didn't know when he would be coming back, so he had to tell Beiwei. If possible, he wanted Beiwei to move to Luoyu. Chong Yuanyuan smiled cunningly. Brother Yi, I've decided to be extravagant today. Let's go to Golden Pearl. Although it's not the fanciest restaurant in Tandu, it is the most expensive one. They say the food there is amazing. I've always wanted to go, but I didn't have a good enough reason, but now I do. Brother Yi, you must not reject this. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't even be able to stand up today. Yimo looked at her eyes and understood that she was speaking from her heart, so he could only say, okay, you've already started working, right? Chong Yuanyuan nodded. I have, and my job is actually related to you. Do you remember Hu Yang, that hospital director of Tankong Hospital? He wanted to suck up to you. So he went to Tandu University's principal and got me a job. I'm a teacher now. As she could still see Yimo be a bit hesitant, Chong Yuanyuan quickly said, Brother Yi, don't worry. When Beiwei comes back, she will call me right away. All right, then let's go to Golden Pearl. Yimo knew that he could only follow Chong Yuanyuan now. He couldn't just ask about Beiwei's phone and leave. He had waited at the university for more than an hour, and he had no other way to find Beiwei than through Chong Yuanyuan. The Golden Pearl, although it only had the one function of being a restaurant, it was the most expensive restaurant in the entire Huzhong province. Nonetheless, it was still full of people. Chong Yuanyuan had a classmate who worked there, and because of her, they were able to get a room. When Yimo and Chong Yuanyuan arrived at the Golden Pearl, the car park was full of all sorts of cars. Chong Yuanyuan's Toyota seemed very noticeable amidst all the luxury cars parked there. But Chong Yuanyuan didn't mind. She was a person with depth and didn't care about cars. Yimo cared even less. He traveled around on a flying sword. He wouldn't care even if he was given a B-2 bomber. As soon as the two got off, some Bentley with a loud engine cockily parked next to Chong Yuanyuan's car. It was also a man and woman pair that got out. The man looked like a young master, but was quite gentlemanly when getting off. That woman looked like she was in her 20s, and she had a very curvaceous body. Although she didn't wear tight clothes, the slightly saggy clothes still couldn't hide her features. She had a very pretty face too. If she dressed a little more provocatively, there would be men turning their heads all over the street. Yet her appearance was actually rather innocent. Other than an expensive-looking pearl necklace, she seemed ordinary everywhere else. Yimo looked at the necklace and knew it had to be worth at least a few million. The beads weren't small, and every one of them seemed natural. Of course, even though this woman was very pretty, in Yimo's heart she was a far cry from Ning Qingxue. Chong Yuanyuan and felt a bit different looking at the girl. This was the second time she saw a girl as pretty as this. In her opinion, only Tang Beiwei could compare with her. Chong Yuanyuan felt a little self-conscious in front of the girl. Yimo scanned the two and looked at Chong Yuanyuan. Yuan, what are you standing here for? Let's go in. Yes, let's go have a big feast. Chong Yuanyuan immediately woke up. It was time to eat food, not to admire others. Hearing their conversation, the two gave them an obviously strange look, but Chong Yuanyuan didn't care about that. She was an extroverted girl. Seeing the two walk in, the man smiled. And Ning, it's said that this restaurant is the best in the entire Huzhong province. It's also my first time here, though, so hopefully you won't be disappointed. The woman nodded and smiled. Thank you. You're spending quite a lot of effort. It's fine wherever we eat. We don't have to come to Golden Pearl. Ning stared at Yemo's back and thought to herself, that man doesn't look ordinary. There is a certain inexplicable feeling about him. He shouldn't be an ordinary person, but his girlfriend looked average, and they drove an ordinary car. Other than that, his clothes were also really cheap. But that wasn't the main thing Ning had noticed. The young man had just scanned her and moved his eyes away, as though she was just any random person on the street. Chapter 586. Really not attractive? Chapter 586. Really not attractive? Eating at the Golden Pearl wasn't purely just ordering from a menu. It was almost like renting a car. You needed to choose the kind of plate you wanted first and then add dishes on top of that. There were silver, gold, and diamond plates. Silver plates were for the 10K and below price range, gold plates for 10K to 80K, and there was only one type of diamond plate which costed 888. Depending on the plate you chose, the cheapest you could get was 222, and the most expensive was 888. Chong Yuan ordered the 888 silver plating and then went into a room. Inside the room, you chose the dishes you wanted from a touchscreen. Looking at it, their meal was going to cost more than 15K. And then you also had to take into account what sort of drinks you wanted. High-class wine would cost a lot. There's only 2 of us. Let's not order that much. It will be a waste if we don't eat it all. Yemo commented as he saw that she had ordered more than 15K worth of dishes. Chong Yuan smiled. Brother Yi, I finally have a chance to treat you to food. So if I don't get something good now, who knows when I will be able to treat you to food again? Yemo knew that she was grateful to him and didn't reject. Hearing this, the 2 behind them realized that it was the girl treating to the meal this time. And Ning frowned. She could tell that Yemo and Chong Yuan didn't look like wealthy people, but even though they didn't have money, they still came to eat good food here. This made her very contemptuous. The main thing was that the man seemed to be using his good looks to get free food. Brother, I think that since you came to eat with a girl, it's best if the guy pays for the food. It's a bit embarrassing for the girl to pay for the food. The man could tell Ning wasn't happy and walked up to Yemo. Chong Yuan was immediately unhappy. She scanned the man and immediately replied, I want to pay for it using my own money. Mind your own business. And Ning didn't expect Chong Yuan to be like that, and she intervened. Miss, Zhirang said that out of goodwill. Why are you like that? And Ning felt like the 2 had no manners at all. Okay, I understand. Anyway, the cheapest dish is only a few thousand? What can we eat from a few thousand silver plate? It's too cheap. Get me a 888 diamond plate. The man hadn't planned on getting the most expensive dish, but those 2 were being rude, so he didn't mind making them lose face a bit. Yemo didn't care, but Chong Yuan was very angry. Although there were a lot of people eating there, and 888 was quite expensive already, those 2 were implying that she was being too stingy. She genuinely wanted to treat Brother Yi to food. Yet like this, what would Brother Yi think of her? It's not like I can't afford 888. Chong Yuan was about to get the most expensive one, but was stopped by Yemo. Seeing that she wasn't happy, Yemo smiled and said, Yuan, what are we, pigs? Can we eat that much? 888 is enough. We'll leave it at that. What are you implying? And Ning frowned and immediately felt uncomfortable. I just wanted to remind her out of goodwill. Are you calling us pigs? Yemo realized that the 2 had ordered the diamond plating, but to be honest, he really wasn't trying to insinuate that the 2 were pigs. I have a good temper and never harass people due to my status, but don't think I don't know how to. Zhirang also felt insulted. Yemo thought that this was just a small matter. No point in making it too big. His words had been easy to misunderstand just then. Considering that, he smiled and explained, I wasn't talking about you or anything, honestly, but whether you believe me or not is of course up to you. Anyway, Yuan, let's go eat. I really want to know how the food is here. The man was just about to start raging when Ning walked over and smiled sweetly. It was my bad before. I was too sensitive. I'm a Ning. This is my name card. Then, she took out a red name card which had a faint aroma to it. Everyone, including Yemo, was dazed. This pretty woman changed faces too quickly. Everyone thought she was going to rage. Yet instead, she started trying to connect with Yemo. That exquisite-looking name card was obviously not one she gave out easily. Even Ji Rang's face sunk. He didn't even have her card, yet this stranger guy was getting one. Yemo shook his head. The woman might have been pretty, but she was too calculating. Although her face looked cold and indifferent, there was a feeling about the whole thing Yemo didn't like. But at the same time, Yemo didn't have a reason to reject the name card. He smiled, took it and said, I don't have a job, so I don't have a name card. Then, he walked further into the restaurant. Although Chong Yuan didn't have any intentions for Yemo, she didn't like that Ning nonetheless. She immediately said, Brother Yi, that Ning is no simple person. You need to be careful. Yemo nodded. He didn't even look at the name card before throwing it into the garbage can at the door. Of course, he couldn't tell her that. Seeing Yemo and Chong Yuan leave, Ning sneered. She was sure that young man would call her later. She would talk him down yet. She was sure that young man was just playing hard to get. She had seen too many of that kind of people and felt like she needed to teach them a lesson. She was very confident in her looks. Ning, why did you give that person your name card? He doesn't have good intentions for you. You need to be careful. If it were me, I'd be getting some people to teach him a lesson, the man said. Ning smiled. It's a small matter, and you shouldn't be casually teaching people lessons anymore. Your grandfather specially gave all you young masters a briefing that you had to settle down. That's just in Beijing, and I'm not in Beijing right now. Also, I have calmed down a lot, Ji Rang said sulkily. By the way, I heard your father say that your family is trying to move to Luoyu. How is that going? Ji Rang remembered the main reason why he had asked Ning out today. Ning shook her head. It hasn't been done yet. The conditions for moving to Luoyu have gotten much harsher. Then maybe you shouldn't go, Ji Rang persuaded. Ning fell into silence before saying, I've been to Luoyu once. It's a very beautiful place. Also, I saw no injustice at all there. Yet every day on the internet you see a lot of injustice happening elsewhere. I don't feel comfortable about it, but there's nothing I can do about it. It's not like anyone can do you any injustice, so why do you care? Ji Rang didn't get it. Because I too live on this earth, and Ning shook her head and didn't continue. She knew that she couldn't talk about this topic with rich people like Ji Rang. He had never experienced injustice and wouldn't care. Young Master Rang. A loud voice interrupted the two, and two young men walked over. The one walking in front was less than 30 and had a square face. He looked quite heroic. The youth behind him looked a little older but was also very handsome. Handan, long time no see. This is? Ji Rang greeted. Handan with the square face walked over and patted Ji Rang on the shoulder. I really didn't expect to see you here. Let me introduce you. This is Zhang Lilin. He just flew over from Ninghai. Lilin, this is my university classmate. Handan suddenly stopped. He was dazed when he saw Ning. What a pretty woman. Luckily, he quickly recovered. Hello, I'm Ning, and Ning greeted. Hello, hello. Handan greeted back while almost drooling. Zhang Lilin just casually said hi. Although Ning was very beautiful, all he had in his heart was Su Jingwen. This was the second time Ning had to be shocked that day. She thought the first time was Yemo putting on an act, but this Zhang Lilin's attitude was truly cold. At least Yemo had glanced at her, but Zhang Lilin didn't even look at her. Was she perhaps really not that attractive? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.